All right. We've done it. We're here. Miracle of miracles. We have managed to do the stream once again. I gotta tell you, I feel like I've had a really beautiful week. That this week for me, Peanut Butter Beatrice, good to see you. Joe, good to see you. Right in the gate. You guys are just sitting there, finger on the button, right? Finger on the button. Just go, 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 go. I love you for being here. Thanks for being here, guys. This week for me is been about healing. Spamming F5. Thanks, Oddity. Oddity, what a trooper you are. You're always there at the beginning and you're always there at the end. I feel like that some days, Oddity, I'm just like, I don't want to do this stream, but I know I have to because I know you're going to be there, Oddity. You beautiful person. The audio is a little choppy. Is that true for everybody? Is everybody experiencing choppy audio? Am I going to have to turn it off and turn it back on again like I had to last time? Everybody let me know. How's the audio doing? How's everything doing for everybody? Yeah, I'm not getting any feedback from you. So this week for me was a real beautiful week. I was able to, looks like it's you, Peanut Butter Beatrice. Sorry. This week was about healing. And this is what I'm going to be thinking about more. And I've spent the last few weeks living in anger and frustration. And I really had a dawning realization, a dawning moment, really last night, of just like, I cannot continue living my life in anger. I reflect back on how I've been speaking to people over the last few weeks. And I see very clearly that it's been coming from a place of anger and frustration. And Austin, good to see you, my man. And people on the stream, right? Like the classic people coming in and talking the way they talk and doing the things they do. And I've been angry with them. And I know that I've been angry with them. And exhausted is a way of thinking about it. Just I don't have the space to accommodate. I think about people that come in and they'll have names like American Patriot, and I'm just immediately like, flush, goodbye. And that's not the person I want to be. Like, I don't want to be a person who is immediately dismissing people, who's immediately destroying people, who's immediately... Like, I do think that people do need to be confronted, and that people need to be confronted about the systems of thought and the systems of belief that they hold, especially because I think a lot of people are holding on to beliefs and they don't know that what they're holding on to is a belief in the first place, that they don't consider what they're thinking about a belief in the first place. Hold on, I want to show you guys this cryptic little picture here. Look at this cryptic, weird picture I found. I love this. This is great. Truth comes to those who obey. Truth is a labyrinth. Some walk in circles, others build the maze. That's really cool. I like this one a lot. And Joe writes, in a lot of cases they've asked for it, but I don't think I should be taking that bait. You know, Joe? Like, I want to be a healer. I want to heal. And we are going to need to enter a period of time, and we need to be in a period of time where we are focusing, where I am focusing on healing. That we can't go on this way. We can't live in this kind of state of constant anxiety and constant anger and frustration and simply trying to scoff off the absurdity. And don't get me wrong, like, things are absurd, and the people who are rendering things absurd skillfully should be lauded for what they're doing, taking the absurdity of reality and rendering it even further absurd so that it kind of breaks in on itself. There's this one performer. I go to, as you guys know, I perform, I go to open mics, and this last week was really beneficial for me personally to go and perform one song in particular that I've been performing to help me kind of get through something for myself. But there's this one performer, and I see him all the time, and his music is absurd. It's like about him being a raccoon, or about him being like a gust of wind, right? And it's all, he calls himself the Great Tick Eater. And he goes up on stage wearing costumes and capes and all that stuff. And the first time I saw him, I was like, this guy, what? This guy's lost his mind. But every time I see him more and more, I'm just like, no, this guy, he's rendering reality absurd. That he's been called into absurdism. Because this is absurd. Like, it's gotten obvious. I don't feel like we need to convince anybody of this. And the Epstein Files story has finally now, I think, broken through, where it's so absurd and so obviously fraudulent and so obviously a lie and so obviously deception that everybody, no, regardless of their political affiliation, is finally now going, oh shit, like, this guy's a fraud. And while that's happening at the exact same time, you just straight up have the genocide, right? Which now is getting so obvious. It's so very obvious that there's classes, that there's tiers in the society now, where there are the rich and there's everybody else. And that the interests of the rich are not aligned with the interests of everybody else. And it's getting just so clear and so obvious that the distinctions between left and right are beginning to actually break down. Omnicidal tendencies, good to see you, by the way, mate. Did you guys see the CEO getting caught with his mistress, who's the head of HR at the Coldplay concert? Yeah, it's just silly bitch shit, right? Like, no one will be punished and nothing will happen. Nothing of consequence anyway. Like, he might step down and take his, $6 million payout, and she will go work in some other department. And they'll probably still continue seeing each other. Like, it doesn't matter. Nobody's getting punished for anything. The rich don't pay consequences, not serious consequences, right? All the consequences the rich pay for are superficial. It's like, there's no such thing as consequences for the rich. There's just PR. That's all. And moreover, it is obvious. I have to stop saying that it's getting obvious. I have to start saying that it is obvious. Like, at this stage in the game, like, there's a kind, I want to be kind to people who are still believing in the fairy tale and in the myth and in the fantasy, because, like, the implosion of reality, if you believed that reality existed in one state and it has now imploded, it's impossible to deny. Reality, or at least the reality that you may have believed it to be, has now shattered and has now imploded in on itself. The president is a pedophile and a rapist. It's undeniable. It's right in front of your face. To believe anything else is to engage in a fairy tale. We are committing a genocide in Israel. It's undeniable. It's black and white. To pretend otherwise is to engage in a fairy tale. And so people are having their worldviews shattered. The worldviews are being shattered and cracked open. And as we walk into this new phase, and it is going to be a new phase, where we are going to watch the word disillusionment is not right. It's not quite accurate, but it is like that. Like how leftists and the left generally got disillusioned with Obama, but it will be more intense because, like, Obama wasn't a rapist who was like a pedophile, right? Like, I mean, I'm sure that it's going to turn out that he was involved in all that. But so I think the fury of all of this and the anger and the angst, well, what it's going to be like is we're going to be watching a lot of people who are going to be, it's going to be easy for people to fall into traps, into conspiracy traps. That big organizations like the CIA and the FBI, their job is to keep everything fracas, to keep everything obfuscated, to keep everything estranged and unusual and difficult. Because as long as things are chaotic, right, you don't need to have one narrative. You can have 1,000 narratives and make people constantly talk about it, right? Keep things confusing. Keep people focused on everything except for what they need to be focused on. And if people find their way in here by whatever force of the algorithm or the heavens brings them in here, then I have to take it upon myself as a personal challenge to approach these people with grace and kindness, even if it gets repetitive, even if it gets absurd, even if it gets silly. Because that's the only way it's going to work. Because that's the only way it's going to work. And that my anger and my frustration and my sense of needing to protect myself, I have to put that aside. Because that's not going to work. It's not going to work that way. I still very much believe in the concept of you guys better be planning on arming yourselves. To my fellow Canadians, you're getting your PAL, right? Like, you're getting your firearms license, right? Have you got that? Have you got that scheduled? Are you going? To my American allies who are listening in, right? Where's your local gun shop? Have you even walked inside of it? I'm not joking. Arm yourselves. Join your local gun club. Right? For me right now, it's just about building up my finances. I'm like right on the cusp. Like, I could go and get the firearm right now. I could have it right now in my possession right now. But I'm gonna wait just a couple more cycles. Save up a little bit more just to make sure that it's okay. Because it's happening. Like, we can't deny that. It's happening. You've got alligator Auschwitz right in front of you. You've got stories. I mean, you take a look at what's going on in Israel alone, right? And that's their plan. That's their plan for us. So be prepared. And so it's a difficult kind of duality, right? It's a difficult duality that we simultaneously need to be prepared and strong and understand that there is an enemy and that enemy is coming to do harm to us. I mean, ICE exists, right? Like these sorts of articles exist. This is from the New York Times magazine. Is it okay to earn rental income from an ICE holding facility? So we simultaneously need to be strong and prepared, but also act with grace and kindness. It's not going to be easy. Yeah, I'm knowing. So there's going to be a QAnon 2.0. Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. No. It's gonna go big too. Like it's gonna go big. Homicidal tendencies. Yeah, I'm tired of this Epstein shit. Yeah, but it's the center of the political discourse right now. Like the Jeffrey Epstein story and the way Donald Trump is reacting to it is currently the center of the political discourse because it's so obvious. It's too much. Like it is. It's just too much that Donald Trump like literally ran a whole campaign on releasing the Epstein files. He ran this entire campaign on releasing the Epstein files. And now here he is being like, are people still talking about this? And my absolute favorite moment was when the FBI came out and said, uh, I forget the exact statement, but it was along the lines of like, oh yeah, Jeffrey Epstein acted alone and he committed suicide, so case closed. We're not going to pay any attention to this. And literally, Ghislaine Maxwell is like in a jail cell. Like we're like, no, like no, none of that is true. And it is essentially like they stood up in front of all of us and just said nobody named Jeffrey Epstein ever existed. It's like a real Ba Sing Se moment. Right? There is no war in Ba Sing Se. And we're all just supposed to like ignore the drill pounding into the wall. No, that's not happening. Okay. Yeah, people snapping all over the place, Joe. Right? And like, I do think that because we're not a very well trained emotional people, we receive literally no emotional training. It's easy for us to fall prey to our emotions. And I feel like I've fallen prey to my emotions in these last few weeks, and that my emotional self really took over. And I feel like I'm finally back down from it, and that I've taken those emotions and put them where they need to be, and sent the direction in the direction it needs to go, in order to uplift me instead of leave me in a state of fear and panic. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be running around looking for saviors, looking for people, looking for solutions, and they're going to fall afoul of grifters, and they're going to fall afoul of con men. And it's all going to get worse. It's all going to get so much worse. Homicidal tendencies, yeah. Local gun shops have been fully co-opted by the right wing. Congress just gutted the ATF. I mean, so, like, it's your right as an American. It's my right as a Canadian. JT, good to see you. Unfortunately, it will serve the even more bonkers right-wing libertarian types more than it will wake people up. I do think that there is an awakening happening. I think that is occurring. And in a funny way, the space that, I guess it's like literally in a funny way, the space that I think everybody's paying attention to is the comedic space. That for whatever reason, the comedic space is America's sacred space. that the churches are dead. No one cares about the churches. No one cares about what the priests say or the pastors say, outside of like small little cliques and cults. The mainstream of the modern American discourse today is comedy. And with the ascension of Donald Trump, there is an entire faction of these comedic types, these comedians, who are now discredited. Joe Rogan is discredited. Uh, you have, what was his name? Andrew Schultz very recently had a whole thing where he was like, I voted for him, but I didn't vote for this. Sure, bud. And so there's this whole other ascension of comedians that are coming out of just the grassroots algorithmic nature of just people are watching them. Who are basically standing up and being like, this genocide's crazy, eh? And it's not a bunch of people being like, well, whatever side you're on, if it's literally a bunch of guys being like, wow, crazy genocide we are currently funding, right? And they're managing to make that funny somehow. And so there is this awakening that has occurred, that it's gotten too obvious, too clear, too clean. And now more than ever, I think it's up to us to articulate our case with clarity and compassion. Omnicidal Tendency says, it's the libertarian types that are usually right. Source required. Yeah, even some Trumpers won't excuse his dismissal of the Epstein issue. No, I think it's a big problem for him. I think it's a big, big problem for him. And I think he's going to lose a lot of support. And I think the Republicans are going to lose a lot of support. And that even though the Democrats are definitely involved in it, it's the Republicans that are holding the bag. Like, the Republicans don't want to get pegged with being called a pedophile party, even though they definitely are. Right? And this is an issue that could destroy them the way that it destroyed the Catholic Church. Right? Like, the Catholic Church never recovered from that. Like, they literally are a pedophile cult. Like, I'm not going to a Catholic church. When I find out that somebody's Catholic, I think to myself, okay, you're gonna have some issues. Like, my condolences. I'm so sorry for you. Because if you are in an organization that is harboring pedophiles and protecting pedophiles, what else are you doing? Right? Yeah, you really want to listen to the teachings of a person who is saying, yeah, like, hey, this pedophile that was preying on children, you should definitely protect that guy, for sure. And I think the Republican Party is going to face the same problem. That a lot of people are just going to be like, you guys are fucking pedophiles. And there's going to be... and I think homicidal tendencies, you're correct on this. Yeah, the Catholic Church never really recovered after World War II and the minor schisms after Vatican II Council. And I mean, I think you could even make a stronger argument that it never recovered after World War I. Like, World War I, you got to remember, like, before World War I, the Vatican, like the Catholic Church, was like God. Like, people were fighting wars over religion. They were literally like, I am Catholic, you are Protestant. Let us fight over that. Like, people would actually defend, like, pick up guns to defend the church. And then the church fully endorsed World War I. And it's post-World War I that you have big artistic movements sweep through, I think specifically with the Dadaist movement. But it wasn't the only one. That swept through and essentially said, these organizations and this institution has no credibility. We're not obliged to believe that these people are sacred or even interested in us at all, because they're not. They're a pedophile cult. And so it's been this like complete and total evisceration through time, where people are just like, oh yeah, this is just a church full of pedophiles, uh, uh, and why are we listening to them? Long Defiant, did you say something before this? Yeah. Yes, all this is happening under capitalism. Don't forget that. That's right. Yeah, that's right. Most people ignore the ubiquity of capitalism, capitalist social relations, connect the dots. That's true. I think that's true. The But things have gotten so egregious that even some of the big capitalist defenders, like think Tucker Carlson, think even Charlie Kirk, like some of these guys that are literally like the priesthood of capitalism, are starting to call these things out and are starting to say what they are, even though their analysis is flawed and incorrect. That their analysis of their society is wrong. That you have guys saying, like Tucker will say, uh, "This isn't the capitalism we were taught." It's like, yes, I'm sure it isn't the capitalism we were taught, but it is just what capitalism is. Like the church isn't going to tell you that they're pedophiles. They're not going to be like, come join the pedophile church. Right? They're going to sell you the best story they can about themselves to get your money and your children. Right? Like they're not going to be upfront about it. They're going to lie to you. And it's like these guys are just hanging on to, but daddy said so. Right? And it's really straightforward that way. It's just daddy said so. And they want to believe daddy, even though daddy's been dead for a long time. Yeah, they're on the negotiation phase of denial. I think that's right. That that are not the negotiation phase of denial, but of grief. Like denial would be to say that it's not happening. Denial would be to say that no, capitalism's the best system, and these things aren't happening. You're making it up. This is Obama. Obama did this, right? Like that's denial. But people are now through that because it's gotten too obvious. It's too much. And so you're seeing like Charlie Kirk. Like Charlie Kirk at Turning Point America is hosting debates between Zionists and anti-Zionists, and really giving the floor to the anti-Zionists, and really being like, okay, we've got to hear from these guys. Like that's a shift. That's an enormous, massive, colossal shift where even a fraud like Charlie Kirk, who I don't think has morals or is capable of morality, understands that if we just continue living in the space of denial, we will just be thrown overboard. We will just be ignored. People will be like, you guys are frauds, and move on. And so for a fraud like Charlie Kirk to maintain his credibility, what little he has, I don't know why people think he is credible, but there it is. He has to actually talk to these people. He has to actually say, okay, so here's the Zionist, and here's like, and not just like a loser whim, like somebody who's actually like an anti-Zionist. And so the shift is real and it's happening. And I want to believe in the positivity. I want to believe in the positive change that can occur. That while things seem bleak and grim, because they are bleak and grim, that at the end we do prevail. And that part of the victory is watching the institutions of capitalism be destroyed and collapse and fall apart. And that we should not despair in the destruction of the society. That we should rejoice. We should rejoice when we watch these collapses occur. We should rejoice when we see more and more people turn away from these very clearly evil and demonic systems that are objectively wrong and need to be objectively torn down. Content, good to see you, my man. Joe writes, it's happening slowly and surely. Shit has gotten so bad we can't ignore it anymore. Yeah. And the capitalists won't just roll over, right? JT writes, I mean, it's just going to become more anti-government from the Epstein fallout, more than having people realize it's neoliberalism. Yeah, I take your argument there that lots of people are going to just continue doubling down on the whole anti-government thing while simultaneously ignoring who owns the government. Like, Donald Trump is a billionaire. Like, Elon Musk was his like right-hand man for a little while there. And it's like, we just need to tell these people with clarity, like, okay, who owns that government? Like, you just keep ignoring who owns the government. Like, is the government a monster? Like, is the government just a beast? The government is just this amorphous force. Grand Designs Enjoyer over on Twitch. Hey, why should people care if X country was in terrible shape, holds statehood over the territory it is now, if chances increase for people to live better lives in at least one of the resulting states if it dissolves into multiple states? Can you rephrase that question, my man? I don't really think. And can you get a bit specific? Like, I don't really understand your question, but I'd like to respond to it because I think you have a thought there, and I'd like to speak to it. Long Defiant writes, Democrats will roll back 1% of Trump's damage and call it a day. They're on the same side against us. That's true. No, true. And we can't forget that the Democrats aren't our allies too, that they're as involved in all of this, that they're part of everything. So Grand Designs Enjoyer says, I'm talking about Syria or about Iraq. Okay. Why should people care if Iraq, let's say, which is in terrible shape, I mean, it's in terrible shape for a very clear reason, which is Western meddling. Like, the West literally invaded Iraq and destroyed it and has rendered it very incapable. A lot of the resources are being stolen out of Iraq. Like, I think the numbers are now that like over 1 million people have been killed in Iraq since the war on terror began. It's probably more than that. Not to mention like the fractures that occur. So let's be clear about why they're in the state they're in. So why should we care that Iraq holds statehood over the territory it is now if chances increase for people to live better lives, at least one of the resulting states, if it dissolves into multiple states? Oh, okay. If I'm to understand your question, it's that should Iraq, is it necessary for Iraq to exist with the borders that it has? I would say no. The borders that it has were drawn up by white Westerners, like the British, like imperialists, essentially. So, and the borders were drawn up specifically to make sure that opposing groups and antagonistic groups to one another would be locked in to a political system so that the imperialists could play them off of each other in the political system. And so I don't think it's necessary for Iraq as a state to continue existing as it exists. I don't think that we need to defend or advocate for that idea. What matters is the people who live within those states and the rights of those people and the ability of those people to gain access to resources. Fake borders that were drawn by white Westerners in a post-war environment don't matter at all. The people do. The people do. And so if the people of Iraq decide we're going to separate this and we're going to create new borders and new lines. And I'm of the opinion that Iraq's a good one because it's been like there's been like a settling in of it. That I'm of the opinion that most people live their lives like that in Iraq. That most people just live their lives as though those borders exist. And most people like there's an entire, I believe it's the northern faction. It's the Sunnis and the Shiites, and I forget which faction. There's a faction that simply doesn't involve themselves in the political life of Iraq as it stands now, because they don't acknowledge its validity. They're literally just like, what validity does this have? It was set up in the first place by like British imperialists, and now it's literally a puppet regime of the United States. It doesn't govern in our interests. We're not interested in upholding it or pretending like it has any power. And so most people live their lives that way already. And then as time passes, there'll be like a formalization of it. So I think that's what will occur as time passes. And again, states don't have rights. States don't have the right to exist. There's nothing enshrined anywhere in any system anywhere that says any state has the right to exist. People have the right to exist. Thanks for your question, bud. Yeah, long defiant. Yeah, the Democrats will reach acceptance and just embrace the Beto faction. Yeah, because that's where the money is. Right? Yet another reason why billionaires are a bad idea. Like, give a person $1 billion and all of those sort of sick, twisted fantasies that exist in the mind of humans can become realized. And you can begin to do so in secret and in shadows. And all of your kind of perverse desires that you have when you're alone, suddenly, instead of them just being things that exist within your own spiritual and mental space, suddenly you can manifest them. Like, no, we should not allow anybody to be able to do that. JT says, there's some good news. Trump's legs are swelling up. Yeah. I mean, we all heard the story about how Donald Trump nicked that trophy, the World Cup. He took the World Cup. It's in his office. And they created a replica of the World Cup to give to the players so that Donald Trump could keep the actual World Cup. Like, what little kid gaudy shit is that, eh? Like, what tiny little boy shit that is, where you want to have you want to have a little trophy for yourself. And he got up on stage with them and was like holding the trophy, and the players are like, what's this guy doing here? What are we doing here? Like, it's just so cartoonish. It's just so cartoonish. Yeah, and Peanut Butter Beatrice, they will not go gentle into that good night. No, that they will reassert their institutional power. The number one way that they're going to reassert their institutional power is through a digitization of the currency. That is going to be their next big move. And that they're going to use AI and they're going to use the digitization of currencies in order to reaffirm or reassert institutional authority. And it'll fail, because everything capitalists do fails ultimately. And it'll do a lot of damage. It'll cause a lot of problems for everybody. There will be a period where it'll be very much like what happened during the pandemic, that there'll be an event of some kind, a crisis of some kind, and the government will roll out a mandatory participation in the digitization of the currency. And that if you want to be involved in the quote unquote the economy, i.e., if you would like to get access to food and shelter, then you have to submit fully to a fully digitized system that will constantly track you and constantly strip you of anything even resembling any rights whatsoever. Remembering, of course, that the goal of the capitalists is Gaza. That's the goal. The goal is always Gaza. That is their governing model. And as long as you are willing to do so in silence and bow your head and do what you're told and be obedient the way that their school systems trained you to be, then you'll be able to continue living or surviving in this pale reflection of creation. And that's all capitalists can offer. That the real goal of capitalists is to constantly remove from the imagination of mankind its own potential. That's its fundamental goal. That it wants you to limit the scope of your imagination and the scope of your dreams to what capitalism can offer. And that anything beyond the scope of capital is considered ludicrous or ridiculous. They'll mock it and cajole you and say that you're just acting like a child. And they'll tell you that the only thing that can be done is for you to work on behalf of capitalists or create a product that you can sell to capitalists. And that is the scope and scale. That is the top of the potential for humanity, for humans. And they don't want you to ever see the man behind the curtain. They don't want you to ever understand that that they are holding us back by gatekeeping us, by putting gates on our very survival. These are chains that when you want to eat food, you have to pay money for it. When you want to sleep in a comfortable bed with any amount of privacy, you have to pay money for it. If you want clean water, rather, you have to pay money for it. If you want clean air, you have to pay money for it. If you want to travel, you have to pay money for it. Who owns the money? What's this money thing? And they definitely don't want you talking about that. They don't ever want you to think of money as an institution. They don't want you to think about money as a tool. They want you to think about money as if it was air. They want you to think about money as if it is water, something that the universe just creates and that you have to interact with. That it's a necessity. That if money was gone from the society, everything would fall into total disarray and collapse. And how would anything get done? And what a silly idea. It'd be like draining a river. How would you survive? You wouldn't have any water to drink. They want you to think that way about money. They want you to believe that about money. Because if you believe that, then your entire life will just be subordinate to the idea of, okay, well, this is the best way to get money. And that's why we live in this kind of cartoon parody of a reality. Like, if you walk outside your door and you walk down to a ravine or a beach or a river or any kind of natural system, a park, you find out pretty quickly that it's pretty nice out there, actually. Right? Once you get out of the suburban hell, once you get out of the hive cluster that is the city, once you actually get into like God's green earth, like your inheritance, the natural system that you were actually born into, it's pretty nice. It's pretty nice. You can sit under the shade of a tree and have a nice conversation with creation. You can feel the energy, feel the eternal thrumming of the tide against the shore, feel the eternal beam of the giving rays of the sun. Watch the temporal clouds give you a persistent Rorschach test and hold up a mirror to your soul. Then you can do these things if you have the time. And capitalism will make sure that you don't. Because the very last thing that they want you to realize is that they're gatekeeping that they're putting barriers in your way on purpose to make sure that you can never have a moment of enlightenment or a moment of connection, a moment of realization that their systems are manufactured and fake and unnecessary and harmful. And that's what's important to remember, that they're just toll booths. They're just erecting toll booths where toll booths need not be. Grand Designs and Joiner asks another question, or makes another comment anyway. The US is, as we speak, deploying nukes in UK. The flight which carried them was spotted over the Atlantic earlier today. Yeah, that's normal. Normal behavior from the death cult. That's the kind of thing that I used to get concerned about, but it's just normal death cult behavior. Oddity writes, Trump diagnosed with chronic venous insufficiency. He's old and he'll just die. And that's like the ultimate injustice that we all have to get prepared for, is that Donald Trump dies in his bed, surrounded by gold. His last words will be like, I was great. JT writes, I do think the growing desire for a reliable new system like China is leading will be harder and harder to deny, even for the current right-wing voters. Yeah. And that's why there's been this big ramp up of anti-Chinese propaganda. And they refuse to actually talk about the history and the system that China actually has. Right? They always refer to it as a dictatorship. They refuse to actually break down what it is and how it operates. Right? And they just continue reaffirming the same propaganda notes over and over again because they don't have ideas anymore. They don't really have thoughts. They're dubbed and it's so interesting to watch because I've said this before. The people who currently control the system aren't the people who erected it. That they are just the dimwits that inherited it, and they don't understand why things exist as they do, and they don't really have a class analysis. They aren't intelligent people. And so they themselves are the ones that are tearing it down. They're defunding the Department of Education. They're tearing down the Department of Education. That's one of the primary social control mechanisms that exists in the society is the quote unquote education system, the indoctrination system. Right? I pledge allegiance to the flag. Right? The control mechanism by which everybody comes to understand that the system of capital is the best possible system, and that communism is the scariest thing that has ever existed. The Nazis weren't so bad. That kind of thing. But they're so dim-witted and incapable of understanding the purpose of their own control mechanisms that now they're destroying it themselves. My Little Pony 1 says, hello, remember I was silenced because of Taiwan. Well, you either acknowledge reality or you don't. And that's rule 3 around here. If you're going to engage in wild conspiracy theories and refuse to acknowledge reality, then I don't keep you around. Rule 1 is if you insult me, literally just use insulting language to myself or anybody in the chat, I just get rid of you. Rule 2 is if you're a Nazi, I just get rid of you. I don't think that you can be rehabilitated. Stalin should have killed more people, should have killed more Nazis. And then rule 3 is if you're not engaging meaningfully with reality. And if you're going to try to convince me that Taiwan is an independent country when it isn't, then you're not engaging meaningfully with reality. Like, I don't tolerate flat earthers around here very long either. JT writes, there's got to be more red note sort of moments inevitably where a communist solution will have to be attempted, even if by the reactionaries, and maybe it'll accelerate away from fascism. Um, no, I think that what you'll see is little pockets. You'll see little pockets arise throughout the country, and uh, and they'll be violently suppressed, as they do get violently suppressed, and that'll just be like the empire is in recession, the empire is receding, its power is loosening. You see statements coming out of some of the old allies, the post World War II allies like Japan, and Japan is talking about how we got to get away from America and we got to start making plans without the idea of American influence. Like, that's a serious statement. Like, you really think about that. Like, Japan has been a vassal of the United States empire since World War II and its nuclear bombardment. And now, because of what's going on, because of the decline of the empire and because of the decline of its credibility globally and its reliability, you have these old vassals starting to say, okay, we can no longer hitch our wagon to this star. We have to actually make decisions. And from the Japanese perspective, the most rational thing for them to do, if they're capable of reason at this point, is to pivot towards China. China's right there, and China's way bigger than them. And like, if Japan were to open up its markets to China and begin operating and moving with China, it would only make them prosperous, right? Would it put them in sort of the thrall of China? Sure, right? Sure, but tough shit. Like, welcome to life. The Oddity writes, will reactionaries even believe that China is prospering and isn't days away from collapsing like all the stupid propaganda headlines? Yeah, it's hard for me to believe that those are effective, like, because they can be so easily dismissed and dismantled. Like, the only way that you can believe that stuff is if you refuse to just look at pictures. But like, people believe that Taiwan is its own country, or they believe the moon is made of cheese, or that the earth is flat, right? And if you can believe those things, then you can believe that China is merely days away from collapsing. So I feel like those kinds of propaganda headlines exist exclusively to wrap in uh, to wrap in uh, um, people who are not capable of fully forming thoughts. Like, we are in a post-reason society. Grand Designs Enjoiner and also My Little Pony are pressing on the Taiwan thing, so I'll talk about that. Do you think there will be civil unrest in Taiwan as tensions rise and U.S. shows more willingness to fight China? That's the goal. Look, the goal of the United States is to disrupt China. The goal of the United States is to disrupt China. And it knows that it can't go into a full-blown war with China. It can't go into a full-blown war with China because of mutually assured destruction, right? That the way modern warfare works between great powers these days is through proxy wars. So I'll give you the clearest example that's in front of us today, right? The proxy war in Ukraine. The proxy war in Ukraine is between NATO and America and Russia. And instead of NATO charging into Russia and trying to destroy Russia, and Russia charging into Europe and trying to destroy Europe, and America dropping bombs on Russia, and like this heavy escalatory kind of thing, they're fighting a proxy war in Ukraine. That they're using Ukrainian soldiers, and they say it like they're as naked as possible, that we're using Ukrainian soldiers to kill Russians, and that's a win for America, right? And this kind of proxy war happens with a lot of consistency. It's a pretty well trodden path, And the people like My Little Pony's point here, right? Where they say, all I was trying to say is that at the end of the day, it's up to the people. It's simple. That's a very quaint, naive perspective. Like, and I'm not trying to be insulting by saying that. I'm just saying that it's not very realistic to say that. That if people make a decision that, like, it's like saying it's up to me whether or not I wear clothing outside, right? It's my choice. It's simple. It's my body, right? I can walk around outside not wearing any clothes, right? Well, the rest of the world has a different perspective on that and has something else to say about that. And so, sure, the people of Taiwan can make that decision, but the rest of the world has something to say about it. And we should ask the question: what's the perspective of the rest of the world? What's the perspective of China on that? And the perspective of China on that, very clearly, and they're very outspoken about it with a lot of clarity, right? It's not obfuscated at all. Is that Taiwan is part of China, right? That Taiwan pursuing its own independence is a clear military threat to China, and it is, right? And this is the thing that your perspective avoids and ignores. It ignores completely that a quote unquote independent Taiwan is an extremely clear, very obvious, like as obvious as me stabbing you in the chest with a knife repeatedly, right? Like if I walked up to you with a knife and stabbed you in the chest with a knife repeatedly, but said that I was your friend, would you believe me? No. And yet, your perspective seems to believe that it's like, but he's saying that they're friends. An independent, quote unquote, and I use quotes, right? Independent Taiwan, because the concept of an independent nation within the world state system is quaint. It's a quaint idea on the face of it, that there is such a thing as a quote unquote independent nation. Like, no man is an island sort of stuff. That, like, as if you exist in independence in your own society, and that all these institutions that exist have no bearing on what's going on in your life. The very clear stated goal, like it's stated by the United States military, it's not obfuscated at all, is to foment an independence movement in Taiwan, to create military partnerships with Taiwan in order to disrupt China in the China Seas. And it's just clearly stated. And so this idea that the people of Taiwan have the right to stand up and declare their independence, it's a declaration of an act of war. And it couldn't be more clearly stated. This is why I definitely take the posturing and I take the position that you either engage with reality or you don't. So Taiwan being independent is the same issue as South Korea because it's a threat to China. So the position that North and South Korea find themselves in was the result of the peace accord and the peace deal that Nixon made with Mao, right? So Mao Zedong and Nixon were at war with one another. They were having a proxy war in Vietnam to, quote unquote, staunch the spread of communism. The Americans had essentially committed a genocide in North Korea, murdered 20% of the civilian population, destroyed all the infrastructure there. And so that war is raging and going on this border. And then you have a 20-year war that's in Vietnam. And then, of course, you have the tension over Taiwan, which existed to that day. And so the deal that they came to, right, the Nixon administration and China, Mao Zedong, came to, part of that was, okay, America will pull out of Vietnam, right? And then, of course, the Chinese and the Vietnamese have their little scuffle and their confluence of how they came to terms to resolve that themselves. China will no longer involve itself in the North Korea South Korea conflict, the Korean conflict. Uh, uh, South Korea becomes a vassal of America, and Taiwan is part of China. That was the deal. That was the deal that the Americans agreed to. That's the deal that the Chinese agreed to in order to facilitate peace, to end the Vietnam War, right? Uh, is China happy about South Korea? No. Is it happy about Japan? No. For very clear reasons, right? But it's accepted it. It's accepted it as what it is. And also, South Korea is a significantly different story to China. That the Chinese don't perceive Korea as part of China. That there have been times throughout Chinese history where Korea has been part of China, but it's always very short lived. And it's very short lived because there's a mountain range here. And so it's very, very difficult for China to get in there and assert influence. And like it needs to get over the Yellow Sea. So it's very, very difficult for China to assert influence in Korea unless it's invited to do so. And there is no history there of there is no serious history there of Korea being part of China. Korea considers itself its own entity. And China considers Korea its own independent entity. The relationship between China and Taiwan is not that. It is not the same thing at all. And yeah, Korea was a vassal state to various dynasties, yet they understood this was preferred over direct rule, which would cause friction. Yeah. It's oftentimes very easy to just have a vassal. That's essentially the relationship between Japan and America. My Little Pony writes, Philippines is a poor American ally based near China, yet they can't invade it. Who can't invade what? Can you put more clarity on that statement? Grand Designs Enjoyer writes, I feel like China already treats it as if they are already independent, since it allows it to militarize without a blockade, without trade disruption, and without military attacks by now. So the policy that exists in China is called two systems, one China. That's the policy. That the idea that comes out of the CCP is, and the National People's Congress, is that we, as China, we will eventually merge, and that our cultures will eventually become one through the passage of time. That we don't need to resort to a military conflict here. That as time persists and as time moves forward, this history that we are currently existing in will fade away, and that time heals all wounds. And that's the, and so China doesn't feel the need to assert itself on the province of Taiwan. It doesn't feel the need to bully itself in there or to make a big stink about it, because it sees that, okay, two systems, that's fine, one China. And as we persist through time, eventually we will merge together, and generations down the line will be taught the history of this conflict, but everyone will understand this is China. And so a part of that is that China allows Taiwan to operate without trade disruption. Because why would it? Right? That's not the theory that it's running with. Like, the relationship between China and Taiwan is not like the relationship between America and Cuba, which that sounds more accurate to what you're talking about there, right? The relationship between America and Cuba is one of blockades and sanctions. China is not following a sanction and blockade strategy with Taiwan. And moreover, the people of Taiwan, when polled, the vast majority of them just want to maintain the status quo. So you have like 10 to 15% saying we should join China officially, that we should just join China. And forget about our own system, allow the CCP in here, they can set up their own system, and we could be part of the National People's Congress, the whole thing, right? And then you have about 15 to 20% on the other side of it saying we should become independent. And of course, that used to be 10 to 15%, but because of American meddling over the last decade, that's gone up a little bit. So you have about 10 to 15% saying just join the CCP, join China, join the National People's Congress, forget about our systems, let's join the Central Planning Commission, the whole thing. And then on the other side of it, 10 to 20% saying we should be independent, do our own thing, right? Join the American military and fight against China is fundamentally what that means. But then you have the remainder, which is about 50 to 60%, saying we like this how it is. This is fine. This is fine. So that's probably how it's going to stay, unless something dramatic happens. My Little Pony One says, Philippines was a former American colony, English speaking, and is now a close liberal democracy ally to U.S. U.S. military ties. China can't do anything about it. I mean, China can do something about it, but China understands, like, the big difference between the Chinese and the Americans is that China understands something called diplomacy. It understands how to operate diplomatically, and it's operating on a correct diplomatic strategy. And it doesn't really need to invade Taiwan, rather invade the Philippines. It has involved itself in the funding, and this is a bit controversial, that there are Maoist groups that exist within the Philippines, and the Chinese have attempted to suppress those groups for one reason or the other. But its direct military involvement isn't necessary or even prudent. That fundamentally what China wants is peace in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. That's fundamentally what it wants. That it understands that the way that it is prospering and the way that it is growing is through trade. It understands that the way that it is succeeding in the world is by reaching out to the world, by having an open attitude to the world, by not becoming isolated and insular. And the strategy of the Americans is to contain China. It's called the Chinese containment strategy. And a big way of doing that is to disrupt trade in the South and East China Seas, to make it so that China cannot get boats out of the South China Sea, to make it so that boats, should they travel down here and go through, should they try to get into the Bay of Bengal, the Arabian Sea, should they attempt to follow this coast, that they won't be able to. That's why the Belt and Road Initiative is such a threat to the West, because it circumvents naval travel. And China fundamentally just wants peace and stability in that region. That's all. That's all it really ever wants. And so it doesn't need to invade the Philippines. It doesn't need to launch a big invasion. Does it like that there's an American military base there? Obviously not. Like, obviously not. But they're willing to tolerate it. Like, they're willing to tolerate it. And the reason why they're willing to tolerate it is because it doesn't stand in the way of their fundamental goal, which is to build prosperity in China. Like, this is another fundamental misunderstanding and major difference between China and the United States. China, the United States sees the world map that we're currently looking at as a military goal. Like when you play video games that are about looking at this map, it's oftentimes just turning the map one color, right? That if the United States is blue, it's about turning everything blue. You can play as the Pakistanis, and you'll be the red color, and the goal is to turn the rest of the countries red, and to spread your influence and conquer the world. It's a very Western idea. It's a very Western idea. It's an imperialist idea. Turn the map the color that you are. Right? Most games that are about civilization building or existing as a civilization are about that. Turning the map one color. Right? China doesn't care about that. China doesn't want to turn the map one color. China wants prosperity for itself. It wants its own citizens to be wealthy, and it wants richness for itself. Mark, good to see you, my man. Isaac, good to see you too. Some people snuck in on me here. I think I saw radio a little while back. Hope you're still here, bud. Hope you're doing well. And Mark says, I don't even get notified when you go live, brother. Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that, bud. Yeah, the shadow ban, right? They don't. The death cult can't talk to capitalists. Like, they just can't do it. Or the death cult can't talk to communists. My mistake. Long Defiant, you've been writing a lot of stuff in the chat. Let me go through. JT writes, I'm very scared about what may come, but it could crumble quicker than we think too. If communist solutions are borrowed by reactionaries, it might inevitably bring them out of their shit culture. Long Defiant says, is your community ready to provide all the services of the government? If there was a collapse, could you intake 10,000 people, give them meaningful work, and organize them to provide for themselves? This is why the left stays on the margins. JT says, there's no point going through horrible grinding conditions, but I wonder how poetically people may come to the ashes of that. Long Defiant says, I'm not sure China is looking to put the world into thraldom. Time will tell, but my gut says no. Yeah, I mean, I tend to agree with that. I think the base principle that China operates on, like America operates on a principle where it says, we're the greatest country in the world, so we want you to be like us. That's its fundamental idea. Whereas China says, we're the greatest country in the world, so stay away. Go away. And that's the fundamental difference. Long Defiant continues, if anything, China would want to integrate itself with the world into the Confucian hierarchical approach to social organization, all living under heaven. Yeah. Long Defiant, Russia/Ukraine equals Zios/Iran equals Taiwan/China. They all serve the same purpose. That's right. Yeah, JT, the people ignore divisions that are clearly existing. It also presumes that the political systems in place are in place, that people can actually just decide this stuff. Yet we still exist in imperialism. That's right. And we have to acknowledge the reality of that. Long Defiant says, I could see China organizing the world in a much more humanitarian way than the West, great potential for progress. There's still contradictions within the Chinese system. It's not the end state. Yeah, but even the Chinese would say so. And that's what gives me a lot of hope for China, is that they seem to understand the contradictions that exist within their own system. And they and it seems to me like they actually have a plan for that. Like when those contradictions actually come to a head, where are they going to pivot? Where are they going to go? And it seems like they know, that they understand that eventually the capitalist models and the capitalist systems that exist within the structure of their system will die out. And their strategy seems to just be to let them. My Little Pony one says, the thing is, during an eventual battle of China against Taiwan, I don't think that's an inevitable. I don't think it is an inevitable. I don't see it as an inevitability. The major reason why I don't see it as an inevitability is that the Americans are not prepared for an actual conflict with China. this is the other point that uh, isn't really well spoken about. I am of the opinion that if um, America were to press the point and force a Chinese invasion, that it would be a complete and total PR disaster for the West. That a lot of the prestige that is enjoyed by America on the world stage is its the perception of its military might, and its military might is fairly widespread. Right, it has military bases all throughout the world. Let's see if I can bring up very quickly American military bases around the world. I'm sure I'll be able to find this straight away. Yeah. Sure. This will be suitable. It's not exactly the one I was thinking of. No, we can do better. We can do better. Can we do better? Can we do better? I don't know. I feel like, yeah, here we go. Now we're talking. Now we're talking. There we go. So as you see, right, the Americans have a lot of reach, right? They have a lot of reach. And so they get the appearance of power, right? The prestige of being thought of as a vast uh, empire. But the United States military has been criticized for essentially being broadly an administrative force. That when genuine fighting happens, it's not Americans that are fighting, right? It's usually proxy wars or the use of mercenary groups. And you can't really successfully wage a war with a mercenary group because mercenary groups have no loyalty. And the and it's also been heavily criticized because its military forces over in the post World War II period and the Cold War period were designed to fight or rather suppress essentially unarmed populations. If you take a look at the invasion of Iraq as a good example of this, right? Like that, yeah, they were able to roll in there and like dominate Iraq because they had the military gear designed to do so. Nothing is more emblematic of this than the aircraft carrier. The aircraft carrier is exactly the type of thing that is designed to suppress defenseless populations and to terrorize defenseless populations. It's an offshore platform where you can send jets to bomb innocent civilians primarily. And so if your target and if the people you're fighting have no navy, have no air force, and are essentially just ragtag groups of militia, you think like Al Qaeda, you think Taliban, right? Then this is fine. This is an acceptable way to wage war. This is an acceptable way to do what you want and have your objectives met. But you can't put boots on the ground, right? Not really. If Americans start coming home in body bags, that's a big problem. And so these aircraft carriers would be taken out by a missile. Like China is not a ragtag group of militia. They have a strong military. And the military equipment that the Americans have, like if the Americans rolled up one of these platforms to China, it would get taken out. It would get taken out instantly. And America doesn't have infinite amount of these things. And so a lot of the military hardware that the Americans have will be met and will be faced with heavy resistance. Meanwhile, the military force that China has been building up is designed to take Taiwan. That China, since 1949, has not been sitting on its hands and has not been just twiddling its thumbs. It's been drawing up plans for how to swiftly take Taiwan. And should America force China's hand and make an invasion necessary, China will do so, and will do so swiftly and decisively. That's the big difference. That, for example, when Putin finally got into Ukraine, he was drawn into that. And it was over an 8-year period of him just dickering and negotiating and trying diplomacy and trying to find a way to resolve this without military engagement. And then finally, he had to engage militarily. He was drawn into it. But it was this very slow, drawn out, like tooth-pulling procedure. That's not what it's going to look like in Taiwan. That should America cross the red line, China will pull the trigger and they will take Taiwan. And it will embarrass the West. That's the thing that I think is not well understood, is that the swiftness of it will embarrass the West. And that it will make the entire rest of the world sit up straight and take notice and make everybody realize that China's military prowess is actually very high. Right now, China is existing in this kind of nebulous uncertainty. Everyone has a theory or an idea, but should China invade Taiwan, that will dissolve, and China will gain a lot of respect in the world for it. You'll hear a lot of crying out of the West, but the rest of the world will go, oh, fuck, okay, China knows what's up. And so it is against the interests of the West to give China the opportunity to display its military power. This is why China is doing a lot of drone shows. You can see that they're almost by the season now. They're doing them season over season. And you can see them on YouTube. They're easy to find. And China is doing a lot of these drone displays. And that is them displaying their military capabilities and showing how coordinated, how well programmed, how well designed these things are. And essentially saying to the West, come over here, see what's what. Make us do it, see what's what. And the military in America has noticed. They're not watching those drone shows being like, pretty colorful lights. What a feat of engineering and ingenuity. Every single military man is looking at those going, those could be armed. And they're completely aware of that. And it's put them in quite a panic. Because I think they understand that should they pull that trigger politically with Taiwan, they lose, and they lose that day. My Little Pony then says, I'm curious, would you apply the same idea of Taiwan to Canada in regards to independence against America? That's a completely different thing. America doesn't have the relationship between Canada and America. So during the colonial period, right, when the Westerners were colonizing, or when the Europeans were colonizing Canada and the United States, the major division between Canada and the United States is between separatists and loyalists. That Canada remained loyal to the crown, basically. That Canada, for the most part, was a British colony, a British colonial force, with the exception of Quebec, which was French. And this is, of course, a contention within Canada, obviously. But the colonizers of the United States were also British. And so for a long time, there was a thought that, oh, the United States and Canada will be one thing, right? People kind of assumed that's how that would fall out. But the thing that created the initial separation and why this line was drawn so firmly was that the War of Independence against the British Crown, against King George, separated into the insurrectionists or the independence movement and the loyalists. And it's basically remained that way. That Canada has essentially always been loyal to the Commonwealth. Canada's part of the Commonwealth. We literally declared our official independence in like 1988. So every single time the United States was harassing us or haranguing us, they were really going after the Commonwealth. And now that has somewhat extended into the EU. That Canada and currently is also calling to be part of the EU. And so, and the biggest difference I think that exists is that Canada is not a military threat to the United States in the same way that Taiwan is a major military threat. That Canada and the United States are allies and have been allies for a long, long time. That's what makes what the United States has been saying with this 51st state stuff so shocking. Because there's no reason for it. It's completely unnecessary. Like it's just straight up brain dead video game thinking of, well, that part of the map is in blue. That's all that is. My Little Pony says, does it really matter whether Canada is or not part of America? Yeah, that's just what I was saying. Like, fundamentally, we are a vassal, right? Like, we're certainly an economic vassal. And that's what makes the actions of the United States so incomprehensible and silly, frankly. Like, that's what makes it so stupid, is that Canada does not have the luxury of standing up against America and making this big staking claim and saying, you guys are big, bad, evil guys, we're not going to deal with you. We have to deal with them. They're our neighbor. We don't have a choice. We can say these things. We can do what we want. Like, we can say what we want, rather. But, like, America is a big monster with a giant cudgel that it uses. And the Canadian strategy is more or less, if America is beating somebody else up, they're not beating us up. And so our goal is to basically just kowtow and just say, yes, sir, yes, sir, yeah, yes, sir, yes, sir. And that's what made this 51st state moment so terrifying for Canadians. That it was this big, giant, monstrous Leviathan that we had been essentially placating and going along with, turning and looking over its shoulder back at us and saying, I could eat you too. And that was very scary, because most Canadians are operating from a place of fear. They understand the position that they're in, that if America wanted to, it could start some shit with us. Like all of the shit that we see in the Middle East, the invasion of Iraq, all of that shit. We know the Americans could take one look at us and be like, we could do it to you too. Like, we intrinsically know that. And that's what makes it so scary. My Little Pony says, wouldn't it be more interesting if Canada was just part of America already? No, thank you. Like, it's bad enough that they're our neighbors, right? I'm not interested in marrying in, right? Grand Designs Enjoiner says, why do you think U.S. empire didn't have an interest to settling at least part of the land they fought over outside setting up bases? I mean, like settling at least part of the land? Because it's just about resource acquisition. It's not about like spreading a populace. Like the populace is essentially cattle to the Americans, to the American capitalist class. And in a lot of cases, the populace is considered quite burdensome. What percentage of Canadians support America? Like, that's a pretty broad question, my man. Like, support America. Like what percentage are Trumpers, for example? Like, I think that you're looking about 15 to 20%. Like, there's something of a truism when it comes to political analysis, which is that on pretty much any perspective and on any position that you want to take, it is about 15 to 20% of people that are in support of that idea. So the idea of America coming and taking over Canada, yeah, about 15 to 20%. And you're going to find that's pretty consistent. Oh, according to the Google research you just did. Okay, very convincing. What's the source on that? It's just some AI shit, right? And then like you're going to tell me the source, and it's going to be like the American Empire for invading Canada. Like this should be a lesson for you, right? Don't just do Google searches and take what the AI says at face value. Dig into your sources. Actually find out who's saying these things. Because like what is the source for that information? And if it's just some dumb AI robot who's just vomiting shit at your face, which it all is now, well, find your sources. And if your source is thecia.gov, maybe question that. Harris Walls Stop 2025. First time chatter over on Twitch. I'm a never Trumper. The orange guy sucks. Yes, absolutely. I live near most of all. I'm on Lake Erie. Oh, wonderful. Lake Erie, the Great Lakes. How's the lake right now, my man? Is it cold? The beach where I'm at, it's finally starting to warm up a little bit. Right, I'm on Lake Ontario, and it's starting to warm up. Very warm. Lucky. How quick does it get warm? Does it get warm earlier? Like, is Erie is shallower than Ontario, right? You lucky goose. I need to get out and start doing some swimming because it's starting to get warm enough to actually get into. I tried to do it earlier in the month. It was just too much. I couldn't. At least I'm not on. At least we're not on Superior. Friggin' Superior is just ice cold all year round. Anyway, that's enough Canadian talk. Matthew, good to see you, my man. Oh, okay. So it's like a different question than what you said it was. My Little Pony says it was some site called Ipsos that said 4 in 10 Canadians aged 18 to 34 would vote to be American if citizenship and conversions of assets to USD guaranteed. Okay, so it's a different question. Matthew writes, I swam at a river today. It was magical. I'm grateful for that, my man. I'm grateful for that. Yeah, getting out into the water, getting out into nature. That's why I'm so grateful that I have my bees right now. So grateful that I have that. Because it gives me an opportunity to like one of the things that's really amazing about Fiddleford, I haven't said hello to you. How you doing, Fiddleford? One of the things that's really great about taking care of the bees right now is like initially I was like so full of anxiety for the little ladies. I was really worried about them and that I was going to go out there and they will have all died and everything would have been a problem and all this kind of stuff. And it just, every time I go out there, I'm like, oh, you're just crushing it out here. You're just crushing it out here. Every time I open up this lid, you guys are bigger. Everything's better. You're collecting harder than ever before. You're just building and building and building. And it always reminds me that for all the anxiety I put in to the political sphere and to humans, right, the natural world is still trucking along and it's still very capable. Still very, very capable. Like, we don't need to be here. We don't need to be fucking with them. And in many cases, it's just our interaction. My Little Pony says, why do you at times refer to yourself as American? I have many Americans in the chat, and I don't really feel beholden to the invisible lines. Like, I live in North America. I do have loyalty to Canada because I think that Canada has its own system. I don't want the American system. I see its flaws. I think the genocide of the Gazan people has been a very clarifying moment. I'm not very happy with my own government's response to it, but at least it's not full throatedly endorsing it. Um, but mainly it's just out of solidarity. Like, we are all human beings and we live in places. Uh, I'll also use the phrase Westerner, right? Because um, I see Europe, Canada, and the United States as kind of a singular entity, and oftentimes Australia can be in that as well. And that's because we have a shared history, and there are differences within that shared history. But look, I'm not really a nationalist. My Little Pony says, to a Mexican, America and Canada is really the same. The housing, the people, the culture, etc. You would be incorrect. Like, the biggest divide that I could point to is that Canada has a universal healthcare system, um, and America does not. And to me, that's like the biggest reason. Like the cult of money and the manic craze for profit has driven the United States insane, and has made it a very dangerous place. And the United States has more or less become unhinged because of this craze for wealth and money. And Canada is not immune to it. Um, but because we have a smaller population and we also experience harsh winters, we have we have this concept of a collective good. That the concept of the collective good doesn't really exist in America. Uh, Everything is just individualism, me, right? If it's good for me, it's good for you, kind of thinking, even if it means throwing you overboard. And so that to me is the distinction between Canada and the United States. It's obviously not a sharply drawn distinction, but it exists. That sort of this the capitalist cult gets pushed back against here in Canada. I'll give you a real clear example of that. So here in Canada, we have a Senate. Our Senate is unelected. It's an appointed Senate. And so that means that, and it's a lifetime appointment. And so that means that the people who get appointed to the Senate essentially are lifetime politicians and basically just end up in a position where they're like, oh, like, I don't need to constantly be in this campaign situation. I don't need to constantly be accepting bribes. I am a senator, and I'm going to be a senator until I die, basically. And so what happens is that the Senate actually puts bills on the table that are important to the collective good, that they have discussions with each other and they say, yeah, this is an injustice and this runs counter to the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. And so we're going to put this bill on the table and we're going to force the House to deal with it. That, to me, is a sharp difference between how the Canadian system works and the American system works, where the American system is just legalized bribery at this point. It's enshrined corruption. And it's harder to do that stuff in Canada. Like, in Canada, we do have a concept of the rule of law, whereas America doesn't really have that. My Little Pony says some Canadians today are dissatisfied with public health care and welfare in Canada and would rather a more capitalistic, low taxes profile approach as America. Yeah, propaganda works. That's just the truth. Like, it's the kind of grass is always greener idea. But I would argue that those people don't know what they're talking about. That they're just buying the propaganda. And there's a lot of propaganda around. Like, the reason why the propaganda is disseminated into the society is because it works, right? If it didn't work, they wouldn't do it. And so they lie about, oh, yes, everything will be so much better. Your life will be so much better when private interests are gatekeeping your healthcare concerns, right? And a lot of people are just gullible and they buy it. right? Like I'm more or less of the opinion that about 30% of the society will just believe anything, and steadily becoming higher. And as long as there's a big billboard uh, 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 flashing it in your face, they'll believe it. A fellow by the name of Ethical Grifter. That's a good post rational name. What nakedness? What happened to your mic? Is there a problem with my mic? All right. Well, glad you're here. Hope you're here to be beautiful. Jefferson Thompson, good to see you, my man. Good evening to you all. If the US thinks Brazil is going to back down, they are absurdly wrong. Yeah, anti-American sentiment is at an all-time high in Brazil. Never seen anything like it. No, anti-American sentiment is pretty high right now. Sounds very hollow and echoey. I don't know. I think that might be a you problem, my man. Here, let me try and adjust. Haven't had anybody. No, it does sound less clear than other streams. Oh, I'm sorry, guys. No, my bad. Audio sounds okay. Okay. Yeah, that's odd because somebody earlier, I believe it was Peanut Butter Beatrice, was saying audio sounded bad, but then it evened out. So maybe it'll just even out. Ethical Grifter. Hope you're here to be beautiful, my man. My Little Pony One says the logic in capitalism. Well, capitalism isn't a post-logic moment, but okay. Is that when our bosses do well, we end up getting higher pay, and the cycle goes on as our capitalists enrich. There's no evidence to support that. It's just something they say because it's a religion. It's not really logical. Higher minimum wages and taxes will hurt the private property. Completely false as well. And also, like, does private property deserve to exist? Like, that's the neoclassical position, right? Or sorry, the neoclassical. That's the neoliberal. That's the neoliberal position. That's essentially neoliberal propaganda. There's just no evidence for it, and and we've had 50 years of it, and all we've seen is stagnant wages, increased prices, increased homelessness. The inequality is out of the world. Like it's off the chain. Like Stats Canada says, income gap hit record high in first quarter of this year. So this propaganda that you're propagating into the chat is exactly that. The Reaganomics, rising tide raises all boats, trickle down economics sort of thinking that doesn't work. It's a religion, right? It's just a religion that all religious ideologies need to have central philosophies, central planks, central thoughts. And the central thought of the religion of neoliberal economics is that if we make a small group of people very rich, it will somehow improve the rest of our lives. It's utterly false. There's no evidence to support it. But we live in a post-logic world. We live in a post-reason world where people aren't making decisions based on what's real. That people are making decisions based exclusively on their emotions. And one of the key emotions, or one of the key positions that most people have to experience, well, everybody does experience, is this sort of paternal realization, the realization that your parents and that your authority figures are just people. They're not gods. And in many cases, you come to realize that they're actually just quite dumb. But you learn to forgive them because you say, okay, well, I'm pretty dumb. So we're all just in it together. But what you said here, right, the quote unquote logic, it's not logical, it's just a religious ideology, is that when our bosses do well, we end up getting higher pay, the cycle goes in, and the capitalists enrich. It's like Santa Claus. Like it's just the same sort of idea that there's an old man with a beard that comes and delivers presents, and that's just a story, right? It's just a fake narrative that gets told by people who benefit from lying to you. In the case of the Santa Claus myth, it's a lie because it's kind of got a tee-hee sort of charm to it. I think it is a bit more insidious than that. I think that the Santa Claus myth helps prepare white Westerners to not only be lied to, but to accept lies as good. So I don't really accept your narrative because there's just no evidence for it. It's just something that people say. Jefferson writes, the US calls our public paying system unfair because no one in Brazil is using Visa anymore. Talk about hypocrisy. Yeah, tough luck if you were in the US still lives in the 90s. Yeah, I mean, America is facing a major crisis. And it's an existential crisis. This is the big problem. Like, this is the central problem with what's going on in the United States, is that it ran on this religious ideology, what it called a theory and called a scientific theory, but has been discredited. And this discredited theory is exactly what My Little Pony said, right? That we give all the money to a small group of people, and that will somehow equal higher pay and better wages and benefits, and somehow literally no evidence to support it, but that's the theory. And central to that theory is the idea that economic power emanates from financial control or financial power, right? Money, the profit motive. Everything is about money. If you can get money, you are enriching the society and the nation. And it's been disproven. It's false. It's not serious. People like Thomas Piketty have written books, Capital in the 21st Century, where he points this out. Just like, yeah, this idea doesn't work. And it doesn't work for the clearest reason that you can imagine, right? Like, if people who take all the money are completely just like, the entire theory falls apart with this very simple statement. If the entire purpose of investing is to get more money, why would anyone invest once they have all the money? That the problem with the theory is that people just keep it. They don't invest it. They don't hand it out. They don't try to improve the society around them. The idea that somehow wages are going to go up, we've had 50 years of it. Where's that? Doesn't exist. The opposite has happened. Literally the only time my wages have ever gone up is when my government capitulated to social pressures and pushed through a minimum wage increase. It's literally the only time, is when the government increased my wages. I have never once had a capitalist raise my wages. It has never once happened in my life. I've never had any capitalist anywhere come up to me and say, hey, John, we've noticed the work that you're doing. Here's a wage increase. It's never once happened, and I've never met anybody it's happened to. That the only time I've ever seen anyone's wages ever go up ever in my life is when the government said so. So I don't get this magical thinking that gets paraded as if it's logic or reason, when it's very clearly just a religious ideology. And because the United States has been operating on this religious ideology, well, reality finally has asserted itself. Reality has finally shown up and has finally said, okay, I'm what's real. Your religious ideology doesn't really matter to me. And so you can either join reality or be pushed away. And it looks like America is choosing to be pushed away. That what happened after World War II is that America created a financial system and essentially said to the global economy, hey, accept my dollars and give us assets, give us goods, right, for dollars. And the rest of the world wasn't really in a position to say no. So they had this forced upon them. If you're going to elect a rapist, expect rapist policies. And but now with the rise of BRICS coming through China, Russia, Brazil, South Africa, India, with the rise of this trade organization, the rest of the world is starting to see that there's an alternative. There's an alternative model that they can turn to, and that they don't need to accept those dollars. And so the value of the American dollar is plummeting. Nobody is accepting dollars for assets anymore. And it's going to have a major effect on the United States. It's going to have a massive, massive, massive effect on the United States. The clearest example that I have seen or that I could point to is coffee. The United States is the #1 consumer of coffee in the world. Doesn't produce a bean of coffee, and it can't. The places that produce, Brazil, Colombia, Ethiopia, Kenya, right? South Sudan, for sure, Somalia, right? It's on this line, the equator, right? That's where coffee is grown. And you can't just do that at scale. Sure, you could probably do it in your little green yard, like a greenhouse rather, but you can't do that at scale. Not to feed the consumption of the entire United States. And so the United States has been trading coffee for dollars for decades. And now these coffee producers are going to start saying, we don't really value your dollar anymore. Do you have anything else? And America will say no, because the only thing America exports is bombs. It has no serious exports, not on the scale that it would need to. So it doesn't manufacture anything or produce anything that's worth anything to anybody. And when it does produce anything or manufacture anything, now it's ruddering up against China. And it's the reason why China is becoming the #1 trading partner for basically everybody in the world. And the countries in which China is not #1, it's #2. So America's facing this. My Little Pony one says, so hey, if neoliberalism doesn't work, what explains the generalized American economic success? I don't think I understand the question. Like the generalized American economic success. I mean, I guess if you ignore reality, you can say that America has experienced generalized economic success. Like if you ignore the prison system, the homelessness crisis, the fentanyl crisis, the massive amounts of abandonment and the sacrifice zones, right? If you just ignore all that, like if you ignore all the poverty, you can say that America has had generalized success. The success that America has had, for the most part, has come from exploitation post World War II, right? That America goes into countries, kicks open the door, steals the resources, like it did in Chile, right? Like why do you have bananas, right? You have bananas because America goes into countries, murders the local leadership, installs their own leadership, and takes the populace and throws them onto plantations. That's why you have bananas. And that's essentially how that works. That America goes around and steals a bunch of resources and sends it back to the motherland. And that's called, quote unquote, economic success. But again, I don't really understand the question, because America has been in a pretty major decline for a long time now. You have huge sections of the populace, like 60% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. That's not success. It's not a successful American society. Like it's not what's real. So, but I mean, as long as you ignore all of that, you just pay attention to Marvel movies, I guess, you can believe that America has experienced general prosperity. Hong Noing says, last I saw, certain polling in favor of universal health care in the U.S. was well into the 90%. Yeah, this is just a case of leaders not listening to their population. Oh, they're listening, right? They just don't care. They're just completely disinterested in actually doing anything about it. Like the it's a system of bribery. It's a system of bribery. Like, and at this point, it's just entrenched. So it's just this entrenched bribe system that has no credibility left. Yeah, oddity. Yeah, NDP calls on Mark Carney to reverse his cuts to the public service. Yeah, Mark Carney is a conservative wet dream, right? Mark Carney is our current prime minister. The Liberals sort of Trojan horsed him in and pretended as if he was going to be better than Polyev. And here, as I could tell, he's just a better spokesman for capitalists. My Little Pony one says it's very difficult to end homelessness. No, it's not. The way to end homelessness is to end homelessness. Give homeless people homes. That's how you end homelessness, right? Other countries have done it. It's not hard to do. You just have to do it. Like this is more or less what I'm talking about when I'm confronting you with your religious ideology, right? Like you have a religious ideology that says it's difficult to end homelessness, and the reason why you say it's difficult to end homelessness, the reason why your religious ideology says that is because you put money ahead of human life. You worship money, right? That the problems, like when you hear me say it's actually easy to end homelessness, the problems that come up in your mind with that statement are all about, well, this person won't make more money. Oh, that's going to create money problems. That'll be a financial problem, right? Oh, that'll create a cascading money problem because you worship money and you're caught in a religious ideology that worships money. And the simple idea of taking a house and putting a homeless person in the house offends you because you worship money and you're caught in a religious ideology. And you don't seem to think that it's a religious ideology, but it obviously is. Jefferson writes, the U.S. is this close to losing coffee, oranges, a whole lot of other produce because of this trade war. Brazil is already opening new places to sell our products, so we effectively don't need the U.S. Yeah, the price of coffee is going up. I've noticed it. Like it used to be that like in America, it used to be that you would get a cup of coffee for free. Like you could go into a gas station, you could go into any like a bank, right? You could go anywhere and you would get a cup of coffee for free. And now that very same cup of coffee that you would get for free, literally anywhere, it's now going to cost you $4 to $5. The price of coffee is going up, and it's going up for exactly the reason that you're saying. Haltosis over on Twitch. It's difficult when you need to please the capitalists, but easy without that. Profits control. Oh, yeah. Brazilian coffee. Yeah. The only place to grow coffee in the U.S. is Hawaii. Can you grow coffee in Hawaii? I'd be pretty surprised by that, frankly. But I've been surprised before. Recently in Cuba, the labor minister has been fired for saying there wasn't homelessness in Cuba. Can you look it up? Not really, because I'm not really interested in pulling that thread. Because oftentimes religious acolytes like yourself, who don't really engage meaningfully with reality, don't really acknowledge what's going on in Cuba, right? Like Cuba is under a heavy sanction regime from the United States. So I'm not really interested in picking on Cuba because Cuba, like many places, has its own problems, has its own internal politics. That the only thing that anybody in any Western nation should say about Cuba is lift the sanctions. And if you're going to talk about anything about Cuba other than lifting the sanctions, then I don't take you seriously. So I don't take this seriously, and I'm not going to pursue it. Lift the sanctions. Mark Jr. says America was losing the Cold War until it started terrorizing communities. Yeah, look at America in the 70s versus any socialist state, even Cuba. Yeah, great. Then that's the only thing that you should talk about when it comes to Cuba. because everything else is just doing propaganda for the empire, and I'm completely disinterested. So I consider that closed. Yeah, there's plenty of homes. The problem is who owns them. Yep, BlackRock, exactly. Jefferson writes, China is going to build a railroad system that crosses Brazil and other South American countries, effectively tying us to the Pacific Ocean. Yeah, not only that, we're also selling and buying more to and for China for sure. Oh yeah, dude. Like, I think that it's a massive, massive boon to Brazil and South America generally that China is opening up trade relations in the way that it is. Like, Brazil being part of the BRICS organization is the best thing that has happened to Brazil post colonialism. Like this is a new era, and I think that if I was in Brazil, I would be very excited about what's happening. I would also be extremely wary because, and here's my warning to all my South American and Latin American brothers and sisters out there, and to the Brazilians. As the United States recedes, as it begins to pull out of the Middle East, as it begins to pull out of these places, as it begins to lose its authority nationally and internationally, rather, and as people begin to abandon the international system, America will turn its eye on Latin America and attempt to reassert its dominance and control in Latin America in more serious ways, much, much, much more serious ways. And if it can get away with just taking over your leadership the way it took over Argentina, it'll do that. But it's never been above just dropping bombs. And so that's my big concern. Like, the places that I think are in a lot of trouble from American militarization and American military action in the future is the Gulf of America, right? Like this whole region, and I suspect that Venezuela is in a big crisis point, and that Brazil will likely be caught up in that. Yeah, I'm glad, Jefferson. I hope that there's serious conversation about that in Brazil and Latin America generally, because it's very serious. I think it's very, very serious. Like, it is only a matter of time until the United States gets run by a proper Nazi, and proper Nazis are going to look at Venezuela, especially Venezuela, right? It's oil. It's the number one oil deposit in the world. Like, and there's plenty of people. Trump himself has said, "What are we doing in the Middle East? What are we doing over here? There's lots. We got to get over here." Like, Venezuela's right there. Florida, Venezuela, Florida, Venezuela. Like, can we put this together? And of course, Israel gums up the works. Greater Israel and the Greater Israeli Project really gums up the works. Isaac says the U.S. is afraid to lift the sanctions in Cuba because they don't want a country with free healthcare, education, and the other social services next door. Americans are going to start demanding the same. Yeah, that's been the whole thing, right? They don't want a successful communist country right next door, showing a successful model, right? That's why whenever capitalists talk about China, they always try to take credit for China. They always try to say, oh, China's like that because of capitalism, not in spite of capitalism, which is the truth. My Little Pony says Elon Musk aims to open a new party called the America Party to run next elections. Yep, it's essentially an independence movement. He's going to run as an independent in the presidential elections. It's like Ross Perot, right? There's nothing new there. It's just in my mind, the major difference is that Ross Perot actually had a certain degree of integrity. He was still a capitalist, but he wasn't a psycho and like a loser. Like that to me is the big thing. The big difference is that Ross Perot, he was just like a businessman. And I genuinely actually do believe that he believed that what he was doing was good for America, right? Elon Musk is just a cynical grifter who is doing what he is doing for his own benefit and for nothing else. Hitosu says, yes, coffee can be and is grown in Hawaii. It's the only U.S. state with a significant commercial coffee industry. No kidding. No kidding. How interesting. It's a little farther to the north than I expected, but I guess it's got to be just because of its isolation. Like it's got to be enough of a. It's just got to be enough, right? How interesting. And then labor costs prevent greater harvests there, though hard to compete with the oppressed colonies. Yeah. Well, and also like it doesn't have that much land in the first place. I mean, you just look at it. It's smaller than Cuba, right? Like so, they're uh, regardless of what the religious ideology says, there is a time when you have to bite the bullet and say, "Oh, I guess resources are actually limited." Like this is the guy that we're talking about, right? This is the guy that we're talking about. Grok rolls out pornographic anime companion, lands Department of Defense contract. Like we're talking about a guy that's doing Nazi salutes, right? Like we're talking about a guy that is funding a Nazi party in Germany, right? Like this is the guy that you want to be the leader of the country. Okay, there. Whatever you say, champ. It's just going to accelerate the decline. Mark says Florida is the gate of hell. Elon Musk is very unserious and should not even be acknowledged. Yeah, the trouble, Mark, is that we have to, right? He is the richest man in America. And he's entrenched. Like the reason, in my view, the reason why Elon Musk is actually interesting is because he is a fascist in like the truest sense of the word. That he's not. He's also a Nazi, but he is that perfect ideal of like the Ayn Rand ideal of the industrial man, right? That the industrial king. And of course, Ayn Rand, being the hack that she is, didn't pay any attention to the reality that these industrialists were all heavily subsidized by the state. That Elon Musk is like the perfect icon of fascism because he is business interests merging with the power of the state and then demanding that everybody pay fealty to the state, which is the business interests. And what's so interesting about him is that he's really showing everyone how fascists are just amazing losers. Like he's just an incredible loser on a scale that I don't think we've seen. Like it used to be the case that people like Musk at least understood that they should exist behind closed doors and that their creepiness and their weird proclivities were socially unacceptable, right? Whereas Musk, if he does understand that his sort of creepy pedophilic weirdo-ness runs against the culture, he definitely wants it to become culturally acceptable, right? And that's what makes Elon Musk just the biggest loser possible, is that and he exists as the perfect icon of a person who should not have why a person should not have $1 billion, because if you're struggling with an issue, right? If you have a problem in a civil society, then that problem is your problem, and you have to deal with that problem, right? As unfortunate as that is. Whereas the more money you get, the more you can make that problem everybody else's problem. So if you have $1 billion, you can make your problem everybody's problem, right? Like, and that's essentially what Epstein Island is, right? Epstein Island is essentially making your pedophilia problem everybody else's problem. Nobody should have $1 billion. I'm of the opinion we shouldn't, like $1 million is enough. Like we don't need that. My Little Pony says, I would agree that capitalism thus works if I was starving. So your litmus for whether or not a system is successful is whether or not people are literally starving. And that's it. Like that's the only criticism. So you're giving a lot of rope. That's a pretty far rope. So it's either starvation or the system's fine. My family were poor a few generations ago. Yeah, that's pretty common. Peasants, and each generation seems improving. First rural, new urban. Now I'm merging urban. Okay. Like, where do you live? Like, there has been a general increase in prosperity generally. Like, it pays to remind people that the improvements that have been happening generally are happening in spite of capitalism, not because of capitalism. That it is innate to humans to want to improve their conditions. All humans at all stages in all periods of human history have always desired the improvement of their material conditions. That has always been the case. So humans want to improve material conditions, and material conditions have improved through human history pre-capitalism. That capitalism is not the what is responsible for the improvements. Capitalism, the improvements have happened in spite of capitalism. Your teacher said humans have 250,000 years of history, but only in the past 300 years most transformations happened because of capitalism. Get a better teacher. Humans have always persisted and existed in improvements over time, like, and that's just true. Like, that's just an objective truism. That the discovery of fossil fuels, the discovery of oil, has rolled out a large increase in activity, industrialization, the industrial period, right? But the discovery of those fossil fuels would have accelerated development irregardless of any system, right? Like, the Soviets also experienced just a massive improvement over that period of time, and actually more swiftly and more effectively because of their ideological structures and because of the structures of their society, which are rooted in communist ideas and Marxist ideas. But to pretend as though it's the fault of capitalism, I mean, that's extremely reductive. Like, again, like the discovery of fossil fuels and industrialization, all societies that go through industrialization experience fairly rapid growth. You want to take a look at, like, at the same time that the capitalist system was improving itself, it was also enslaving the African continent and committing a genocide against the First Nations people. So, like, is this an improvement? Like, if you're part of, like, the Chickasaw tribe, right, or the Mohawks, right, it's not an improvement. If you're a black slave from the African continent, it's not an improvement. But if your perception of what is or is not an improvement is strictly limited to your dad and people that look like you, then yeah, you're gonna believe that it's the fault of capitalism. Yeah, now we go buy industrialized stuff at supermarket made by local big factories and use technology in cities with transportation and infrastructure. Yeah, and that happens in every society that industrializes, communist or capitalist. That the question is that equally distributed? Is it just general improvement? Like, you are attributing to capitalism that which is not capitalism's responsibility. Like, that's just the bottom line. You're just doing a big old daddy said so, and you are attributing to capitalism that to which capitalism deserves no responsibility. Like, if you want to see, like, rapid growth in what you're talking about, then you want to talk about the Soviet Union. You want to talk about the Soviet Union from 1920 to, like, 1968. That's what you really want to talk about. Like that's rapid growth. Like, the industrialization of the capitalist world happens over about 400 years, 500 years, right? Well, the Soviets did that exact amount of industrialization and that amount of growth in decades. So, and again, like My Little Pony says, would industrialization have happened without a private capitalist framework? Look at the Soviet Union. Like, look at the Soviet Union. Soviet Union industrializes, like literally, my man. I know that you're being bombarded with a lot of propaganda and you're entrenched in a religious ideology and a religious worldview, but you really got to hear this, right? Like, and I know that when I say the Soviet Union, the only thing that pings in your brain is the propaganda that your teacher told you. Like, the Soviet Union, like here is a life that somebody actually lived. This is a real life that happened. That there were people who were living under SARS. There were people who were living on, like, turn the propaganda brain off for a second. Exist in reality. Because you saying it fell isn't relevant to the conversation. Because you have no idea the conditions under which that happened, right? Like, and you don't actually know anything about the Soviet Union. So please, for the love of God, please, I'm begging you, just listen. There were people in the Soviet Union who were literally serfs under kings called the Tsars. And in the space of one generation, they went from being literally serfs plowing fields behind oxen by hand with an average life expectancy of like 40. And in the space of a single generation, they defeated the Nazis, the most terrifying industrial capitalist military ever fielded at the time, and were the first people into space in one generation. Now, if you want to have a more robust conversation about the nature of the decline of the Soviet Union and its eventual dismantlement, we can have that conversation. But what you can't deny is the extreme rapidity, the pace by which the Soviets went from being like a rural agrarian monarchy to being an industrialized superpower. And if that's your litmus for success, if that's what tells you good society, bad society, thumb up, thumb down, if that's your judgment, then communism has capitalism beat hands down. It took America 400 years to industrialize itself to that place. It took the Soviet Union 40. Like, at some point, reality has to assert itself. And you just have to look at reality and go, oh, reality exists. And my religious ideology dies at the altar of it. Yeah, this sort of thinking is like tax the rich and they'll leave and so on. Yeah, exactly. They'll just scoop up the earth and go find a new planet. JT writes, did a Milton Friedman trained Grokbot get released into chat? No, I think that this is just like a person, right? Like, there are a lot of people like this. You support taxing the rich? I mean, I support the dissolution of the wealthy class. I'm a communist, right? I think that the workers should own the means of production and that capitalists as a class should stop existing. So, and I tend to view the tax the rich movement as a way to maintain the power of capitalism and private property ownership, and to placate a rebellious populace. So, should it happen, I will celebrate it. I will stand here and be like, haha, rich people, get taxed. But I really should stress that the goal is to eliminate them as a class entirely. I read some angles. He says some weird things. Like what? Like, did you go on like a little Nazi website and find like a weird little quote that you decontextualized? JT writes, turns out the most capitalist-loving place opposed progress the most, kept slavery the longest, yet imprisons the most humans, starts the most war, backs the most genocides, has the least healthcare. Yeah. But it's whether or not I'm doing good. That's all that matters. Halitosis writes, Ayn Rand is isekai power fantasy for rich people. I don't fully understand that comment, but I think that you're right. Like, Ayn Rand is just capitalist porn. That's all it is. It's the precursor to 50 Shades of Grey, right? Just somebody writing about how much they loved a rich, powerful man. Like, Ayn Rand just had a submissive bondage fantasy. That's it. She just wanted to be dominated by some rich, powerful man. She wanted a rich, powerful daddy to whisk her away so that she didn't have to think about anything or do anything. And so she wrote a bunch of porn about it. Like, that's all. That's all it is. Like, it's not like objectivism is a stupid ideology for morons. Like, if you actually tried to implement objectivism as a theory, it would immediately destroy your society. Because objectivism fundamentally says that selfishness is good. Okay, you just can't have a civil society. My Little Pony says, Engels said about the principles of capitalism. Yeah, the principles of capitalism is Engels' kind of seminal work, where and is a work that doesn't get the credit it's due. I actually came to the principles of the principles of communism rather, quite late, and it's because it's sort of downplayed. Like, everybody talks about capital, obviously, and the Communist Manifesto gets a lot of play. But really, I think people should be talking about the principles of communism, written by Engels, because I think that he does like a really exceptionally good job of giving a lot of clarity to what communism is, what it represents, and what it's for and why it's useful. But you're kind of talking about it pretty vaguely, so I don't really know. Engels says things like progressive tax over private capital, state-owned factories. Yeah, I think the liberals learned from this, sure. Like, is this controversial? I don't know how to respond to this. Jefferson says, the U.S. healthcare system is so alien to me. Yeah, Brazil's healthcare is free, even for foreigners. Last week I saw a video of an American woman using our United healthcare system for the first time. Yeah. No, like, the American system is a perversion. Like, it's gatekeeping. It's toll booth. It's toll boothing, right? You're just erecting a toll booth saying if you want to have access to basic things that should be on offer for free in any civil society, then you need to pay the toll. And it's just a psychopath with their hand out. That's all it is. Cotton writes, Marx and Engels were the 19th century podcaster Chapo boys. Shit posting on Hegel. I mean, it does pay to remember that, like, post World War I, like, the workers were seizing the means of production. Like, people, this has actually been somewhat removed from the consciousness of the modern day person, which is that, like, World War I was a discrediting moment for Europe and for European power systems. That it really did make everybody in the world and everybody in Europe go, why are we listening to these guys? Why are we listening to these kings and these priests? Like, why are we paying any attention to these guys at all? We should just take over those factories. And for them, it wasn't philosophical. They weren't sitting there being like, things would be better if we went and just took the means that they literally, as a group of men, went into a factory and took it over. And when the capitalists showed up, they shot him. That's what was happening. And the capitalist class, of course, in the tizzy that they were thrown into, because they still wanted to have their slave systems, they turned to the politicians and they said, do something about this. And the politicians said, we can't. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the military power to be able to do anything about this. Like, we have to worry about foreign threats and what we're doing abroad. We can't also deal with this domestic crisis. And there's a reason why Lenin thought that the first revolution, the first real communist revolution, would happen in Germany. And it's because communists were going into factories and taking them over and operating them for the benefit of themselves and their community. They weren't asking for permission. Like, which, based, like, awesome, super cool. I don't know why we're asking permission to capitalists for a single thing. I don't know why we listen to capitalists at all for a single reason. Measures progressive income tax. Yep. Any civil society requires just a basic progressive income tax. Like, you don't want billionaires in your society, and it's obvious. You can just take a look at frauds like Elon Musk. Abolition of inheritance. Yeah, good idea to destroy generational wealth. It doesn't make sense that someone is just born a billionaire. State-owned transportation. Yep. Anytime we've done any study on transportation, the freer and more available it is, the better the economy is, for very clear and obvious reasons. Like, it's easy for people to get around. You can do more commerce more easily, right? And anytime anybody erects any kind of bus station or a bus stop anywhere, or a subway station anywhere, businesses just flourish around that area. It's because that's where people are coming in and out of, right? So state-owned transportation is a great idea. Extension of state-owned factories and instruments of production. Yep, wonderful idea, perfect. And compulsory labor for all. I mean, everyone should be able to have access to labor, and everybody should have access to a job, because this is where I somewhat diverge with people like Engels and Marx, which is that they view labor as the path to prosperity, but they didn't have an awareness of how overwhelming technology would become. That eventually there just comes a point where everything's fucking super automated. Like, you don't need to have a compulsory job if you have a machine just shitting food out. And then free public education is just a no-brainer. Like, and anything other than free public education is just a moron's way. Like, you're literally hamstringing your nation. You're hamstringing your society by making people pay for an education. It's crazy. Like, you wanna keep people mired in conspiracy brain flat Earth bullshit their whole lives. Cool. Like, it's just bad idea. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, you find good things weird. Yeah, JT's kind of hitting it here. Like, we find your perspective to be quite strange, right? Just a bit odd and unusual. Like, I really got to start asking, like, why are you hanging on to these sort of backwards ideas? Like, free public education. How could Engels say such a weird thing? Like, yeah, most of the free world, including most of the Western world, has free education. Mexico has free education. Like, it's not even remotely controversial. Only people who are deeply mired in the religious ideology of neoliberal capitalism think that this is at all controversial. Like, that's what makes the moment that we're living in so stupid and so ridiculous and so absurd, is that the ask isn't like, it's not like communists are standing here asking for incredibly ridiculous, outrageous, radical stuff. Like, most communists are literally just asking for things that have existed in France for 150 years. Like, really. Like, that's what's making this whole thing so difficult and so frustrating and draining and obnoxious. That, like, everything that we're talking about exists. My Little Pony says, but these measures are only a way for transitioning from capitalism to socialism. The ideal thing is still revolution to take everything over, and then afterwards you have a unified state and party to plan and make things through co-ops. That's one way of doing it. I think the wisest thing that has come out of any communist movement came out of China, where the Chinese communists said, every nation is going to have to come to communism through their own method. There is no one tried and true way. There is no one singular truth of how a nation is going to become communist. And I'm so grateful that they hold that position, because it distills out fundamentalist viewpoint. It distills out the concept of a fundamental, like, and the position of every communist has always been, yeah, we would love it if the capitalists would negotiate their way towards socialism and communism. We would love that. That would in fact be preferable because it would be so much easier. But they won't, and they don't. That capitalists, the goal of the capitalist is to regress the society back towards slavery. That's their intrinsic goal, is to have the society fall into entropy and fall back down towards slavery. And you can see that in America. You can see that in Canada. Canada has the slave system, that's a temporary foreign worker program. America has the prison system, which is a slave system. Social Democrats, My Little Pony continues. Social Democrats are a threat to capitalism because it gives workers a taste of public management, which could eventually lead to something further. Who knows what comes if they get it after Sockdown? I make the argument that Social Democrats typically operate on behalf of capitalism, that they are, it's liberalism, right? It's essentially just placating the people with piecemeal reformism in lieu of revolution. That if the choice is between be overthrown and have a new government installed, thereby losing all your power, or giving a small token of piecemeal reform, or even a large token of piecemeal reform, the capitalist class will give the token. And that's essentially the role of social democrats, is to make sure that capitalists have a method by which they can negotiate themselves out of a revolution. And so it's not to say that social democrats don't get wins for the populace, but those wins are usually short-lived because the capitalists then operate in order to regress them, because that's the role of the capitalist. Yep. My Little Pony is basically saying it much more concisely, because looks like you found Google. Lenin says that they are promising reformists that will continuously attempt but be sabotaged by bourgeois because our institutions were founded by bourgeois. Yeah, until they realize things can't be solved through reforms. Yep. That's basically it. Like, the communist perspective is that capitalists are psychopaths and can't be reasoned with. Like, that's the communist perspective. That these people go to Epstein Island, like they rape children, they're pedophiles, like they're slavers. They're not going to suddenly, out of the goodness of their heart, negotiate some kind of new deal with the society. Like, that's not what happens. Yeah, and Mark pointing out, social democracy was only allowed to compete with the USSR. The collapse of the USSR and the decline of social democratic reforms have a direct relation. Yeah. Although I don't like this phrase, the collapse of the USSR, because the USSR didn't collapse, it was abandoned. Like, that's if you really want to get into that time period, my perception of it is that the post-World War II leaders of the USSR were doing everything they could to placate Europe. Right? The Nazis killed 20 million of them. It's a huge, massive scar. Like, it's just an enormous thing. And clearly the leadership of the Soviet Union after Stalin were desperately interested in preventing another war like that. Right? And so they were doing everything they could to placate Europe. And the existence of NATO, including the inclusion of former Nazi officials and a Nazi country, Germany, it's really scary. And NATO exists to destroy the USSR, and so they just decided, okay, well, if there's this force and this alliance that exists to destroy the USSR, then why does the USSR exist? And so it isn't that the USSR reached this moment where it could no longer bear the weight of the contradictions with it, and it collapsed. They decided to let it go. They chose to let it go. Like, They believed that it would be a path to peace with Europe, and they were wrong, right? They were wrong. Capitalists will always pursue war and slavery. That's what they are, and that's what they will always do. Uh, My Little Pony says, I believe social democrats can't reform a lot because they are unpopular. It's not that they're unpopular. Social democrats are relatively popular. It's just they're operating within a system that's hostile to them. Like, Bernie Sanders was a very popular candidate. He just was operating in a system that was designed to stop people from him ascending, very clearly. Yeah, the illegal disassembleship of the USSR is more correct. Yeah, over 70% of the USSR citizens wanted to keep it in a referendum held, and the capitalists that took over the USSR did it anyway. Yeah, the USSR was also illegally dissolved. Yeah, people don't want private government and big state. Yeah, people don't like fascism. Like a private government, like that's private government is just another way of saying fascism. Like the merger of business and state, right? Oh, people don't want public government. I think that you will find that that is a very false statement. Like people don't want public government. What are you talking about? Like that's actually an insane statement to make, dude. People don't want public government. Then what do people want? Like what do people want? If people don't want a public government, then what do they want? Do you think they generally just want like a dictatorship? What I mean is people don't want an inflated, big, impactful state. Yeah, I mean these are very vague terms, right? Like this is all extremely just big, broad, sweeping. Like you can basically believe whatever you like with that statement. Like I would argue that having an impactful state is quite important, right? I would like a state to have an impact on my healthcare. I would like a state to have an impact on my education. I would like a state to have an impact on my roads, on my transit systems, on my garbage removal systems. Like it's the question isn't the cycle of growth. Yeah, your religious ideology that doesn't work. Yeah, the cycle of growth, neoliberalism, giving incentives to private businesses. Yeah, this doesn't work. We've been trying it for decades. It doesn't work. It's just a religious ideology. Like this is the kind of thing that the priests will teach in their quote unquote university classes. That doesn't work. And it doesn't work very obviously. You can look at it not work. Like go literally anywhere else. You don't even need to go to non-white nations. You just go to like France or Spain, right? You can go to Germany, right? And you can see how what you're talking about doesn't work, and that nobody would believe it. Isn't that how South Korea and Taiwan got rich? What? South Korea was rebuilt through the Monroe Doctrine. Like, literally, the American government, through an enormous American government initiative, poured resources into South Korea and rebuilt South Korea. Like, and it's so odd that you're pointing at South Korea to be like, oh, look, so prosperous. South Korea is in a major economic crisis right now. Just an absolutely overwhelmingly big, flashing red light, could not be brighter, massive crisis right now that they can't get out of because all of their solutions are your religious ideology. Oh, you're using GDP. Okay, cool. So two rich guys traded houses back and forth, and suddenly everybody's rich. Cool. GDP is not like the person that invented the metric of GDP said not to use it that way. Straight up. The guy that invented the concept of the gross domestic product said do not use this as a measurement of the success of an economy in the society. Nakedly, as open as you can get. So you got to abandon your religious ideology, man. This is just a religious ideology that you're hanging on to. South Korea took time to, yeah, everybody takes time to grow. Like, I mean, Korea needed to recover after the Korean War, right? Like in the 1950s, America destroyed Korea. Like North Korea bore the brunt and absolutely destroyed it. Like literally every building in North Korea was destroyed, or I should say, every building in the unoccupied Korean territories was destroyed. 20% of the civilian population was killed. It was a genocide. Like it was just brutal. And then the people who perpetrated that genocide against the unoccupied Korean territories turned around to their occupied territories and poured billions upon billions upon billions of dollars into it to reconstruct it, specifically so that they could look at religious acolytes like yourself and say, see, capitalism is better. It's just silly bitch stuff at this point, man. Like it's just really silly. Like you're standing there being like private interests and incentives is the way to do it. And I know that because of this massive government initiative. Like this has real, like enormous, like take your government hands off my Medicare kind of thinking. Like you're standing in front of me telling me and extolling the virtues of private enterprise, and the thing that you hold up to tell me about how good private enterprise is a massive, at the time, the most massive government expenditure, non-military government expenditure in the history of the nation. The Monroe Doctrine was straight up like a multi-billion-dollar reconstruction program that was completely government funded. And you're standing there using it as an example for the success of private industry. Yikes, 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 yikes. Yikes, 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 yikes. This is a religious ideology. My Little Pony says, I don't know whether North Korea is so poor because of the embargo, but it used to be richer than the South. Okay, buddy. I've said it several times. I do not think you're listening. So I'm going to say it one more time. I know that you have a problem with engaging with reality, okay? In 1950, right, North Korea and South Korea had been split apart because of Japanese imperialists, right? The Japanese imperialists were invading this territory. North Korea represents the resistance. South Korea represents the attack. This line is drawn, okay? 1950, North Korea begins a push back into South Korea to get rid of the remnants of the Japanese imperialists. We're good so far, right? So North Korea pushes Japanese imperialists out of the southern peninsula. They almost succeed. What prevents them from succeeding is the invasion of the southern peninsula by the Americans. The Americans invade the southern part, what we call South Korea, and they push almost all the way back to the Chinese border. The Chinese get involved and push the Americans back to the original Japanese imperialist border. During that period of time, the Americans threatened to drop nuclear bombs on China, by the way. The border is reestablished, and then this state essentially has persisted since that time. During that war, 1950, I've said it 3 times to you now. Let this sink in. Take it seriously. Every single building in North Korea is destroyed. Rubble. The schools, the hospitals, the temples, the administrative buildings, the houses. Walk out of the building you are in and look at all the buildings you see and imagine them as reduced to rubble. No standing structures. They blew up the dams. They blew up the ancient burial grounds. They blew up everything. During that period of time, they killed 20% of the civilian population. 1 in 5. The next time you're standing in a room with 5 people, pick one and they would disappear from your life. 20% of the civilian population is killed. This continues until the end of the Korean War. And the end of the Vietnam War. South Korea and North Korea, it is agreed upon by China and America, will maintain this position. America pours billions of dollars into South Korea because of the Monroe Doctrine, and of course Japan as well, they do that with. North Korea gets nothing. North Korea is left to rebuild itself. Because that was part of the agreement between China and America. Sure, some general trade, but while South Korea got a Monroe Doctrine, giant government subsidy, so you can extol the virtues of private property ownership somehow because of your religious ideology, North Korea got nothing. So this magical thinking that you've embedded in your brain as a religious ideology needs to just disappear. It just needs to go away. Because it isn't serious. It's very clearly another example of capitalists trying to take credit for a problem they created. That every single time any Westerner points at North Korea and says, oh, look how poor they are, it's because you made them that way. It's your country's fault, dimwit. Like, you can't destroy every building in a country, murder 20% of the civilian population, and then expect them to suddenly like shoot rockets into space all of a sudden. Like, what are you, crazy? Cool. Like, this is a pathetic rebut, dude. That's just pathetic. Like, I'm sorry that your dad was wrong. Like, I'm sorry that the religious ideology that you followed. Like, you might as well just be saying Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment, my man. You might as well just be saying the earth is flat. Like, it's crazy. This is why the capitalist world is in a major decline. Because we're in a post-reason world. We're in a world where reason is not permitted to have a voice. And the people who are blindly following this religious ideology are incapable of thought. They're incapable of going 1 + 1 in fact equals 2. That you are politically motivated to go 1 + 1 equals banana peel. And everybody around you goes 1 + 1 equals banana peel. And you go 1 + 1 equals banana peel. And if somebody goes, hey, 1 + 1 equals 2, you go, that doesn't seem right. Everybody said 1 + 1 equals banana peel. This guy's crazy. Yeah, and exactly. Like USSR was still rebuilding from World War II. Like, okay, you want to expand the history lesson? Let's expand the history lesson. World War II. Jesus Christ. 1946 is the end of World War II. Your capitalist Americans dropped 2 nuclear bombs on Japan. The only time civilian populations have ever experienced nuclear bombardment came from a capitalist nation called America. The nuclear bombardment, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Of course, and the nuclear bombardments were completely, oh, dude. My Little Pony, what are my thoughts in regards to the shape of the Earth? Earth be round. We took picture. Dude, if you try to argue the Earth is flat, I'm banning you. Like, get the fuck out of here. So after the capitalists committed a mass atrocity on Japan twice for no reason, right, except to scare the shit out of the Russians, World War II came to an end. The Russians lost 20 million people in World War II. They had cities reduced to rubble. They were not in a position to flood Korea with a lot of resources. Like, it really is time, my man. Like, you keep trying to prod and you keep trying to prod, and it's just baby shit. Like, there just comes a point where you just have to look in a mirror and acknowledge that you believe the things you believe because your dad told you. And your dad was wrong. That's it. You believe the things that you believe because some authority figure told you so, and they were wrong. Obviously so. Like, obviously so. That they are one of the people who survived the purges, right? That when the McCarthy purges came and purged out all the communists, right? The people who are acknowledging the reality exists, what's left? A bunch of kooky losers saying dumb shit. Unchallenged, by the way. Like, there are reasons why the Western world is in the decline that it's in. And it is in the decline that it's in. And the decline is going to get obvious. It's going to get clear. It's going to get very, 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 very clear. And you walking around talking the way that you're talking in my chat is going to get you beat up. Like, people are going to beat the fuck out of you if you talk that way in like 5 years, probably even sooner than that, because it'll just be so embarrassingly false. XD says, John banned this guy already. He knows your usual talking points, is deliberately trying to provoke you. I mean, it's worth going through. Like, I think that this guy's a perfect illustration of the foolishness of capital. Like, this guy's a fool. Like, just a fool. Uneducated, unaware, completely a religious ideologue. Doesn't really have anything interesting to say. And I think it's a really good illustration of how weak capitalists have become, that they don't actually have arguments anymore. All they do is point at false things and say false things about the false things. Like, it's incredible. Yeah, like, this is embarrassing. Why communists support violence. Capitalists are literally creating a genocide right here, dude. There's a genocide happening right there. It's just embarrassing. Yeah. Content writes, like, we can't wait for the salvation of our climate to not be inconvenient to capitalists. Yeah. But this is what I'm saying, Content, is that I think this is illustrative, right? Like, we need to overthrow these people. Listen to this guy. You're seeing him, right? Like, you heard the whole thing. You've all been listening in. Do you think we can negotiate with this? Do you think that this is a rational person? Do you think this person is capable of reason? Or do you think that they support genocides, and if Nazis were in charge, they would basically throw up the sick Heil too? Which one of those two things do you think is real? Like, My Little Pony says, I don't support Israel. Why not? It's the great capitalist project. Like, Israel is the great capitalist project. You've been in my chat for over an hour extolling the virtues of neoliberal capitalism. Israel is a neoliberal capitalist project. It is, in fact, one of the peak ones. It's one of the most important ones. So why do you support capitalism, but you don't support its major projects? Like, that's the incoherence. Aren't most countries neoliberal? No. Most of the world's population do not ascribe to the religious ideology of neoliberal capital. That most of the world's population is in a position where it simply must deal with it. Because neoliberals are so bloodthirsty and psychopathic that they'll murder people if you tell them that we're not going to abide by your religious ideology. That we're not going to give you our assets and the wealth of our nation for free because you're a slaver. Like, most of the world's population look at neoliberal capitalists and say, how do we get away from that? That's most of the world's population. That My Little Pony says, you don't think there's people who truly believe in the power of it and transformation of society through this as a tool? Yeah, I think there's people who believe in it. Just like I think there's people that think the earth is flat. Like, just because a person thinks the earth is flat does not make the earth flat. Just because a person thinks that neoliberal capitalism has power and has an ability to transform society for the good doesn't make it true. But once you actually look at what neoliberal capitalism is doing and the destruction that it's wreaking on the society, for some reason, you don't seem to acknowledge Israel as a neoliberal capitalist project, probably because it completely overturns the table on your religious ideology. Has it, though? Has what, though? It's just a nothing statement. Like, there's a reason why BRICS exists. Has neoliberalism done what? Like, speak with clarity. Has neoliberalism lifted societies up? No. Like, just nakedly, like, bluntly, no. Like, the people who claim that neoliberal capitalism have lifted up nations tend to ignore the graveyards, tend to ignore the resource theft and the resource acquisition, right? As long as you ignore the wake of death, the literal genocides, the literal apocalypse that neoliberal capitalists wreak on everybody, as long as you ignore that, oh my God. Yeah, a nation run by a communist party calling its own nation socialist with Chinese characteristics, uh, in treaty with imperialists, is experiencing success because of capitalism. It's just not worth responding to. It's just too stupid. Mark Jr. writes, us Marxists take pride in the past and current attempts of socialism. Why don't capitalists do the same with their own projects? Yeah. No, because if they actually owned up to what they were doing and how they operated, like, it's just naked at this point. It's just so naked. And it's just sort of wild that there's anybody who's still defending it. Like, My Little Pony, like, how old are you? Like for real, how old are you? Because this has like big 14-year-old energy. Like, 23, it's grow up time, my man. Like, it's grow up time. Like, the things that your teachers taught you, the things that your dad told you, right? The guys grumbling into their cups at your local bar or whatever, they're full of shit. They're completely full of shit. Yeah, and Cotton, of course, laying out just like the big question, right? If China is capitalist, then why can't the West do Chinese capitalism? Socialism hasn't shown me any great achievement, except for all the major accomplishments, right? Like, we're talking about China, right? China lifts up 800 million people, calls it socialism. You call it capitalism for some reason, in spite of all the evidence. Uh, the social healthcare system, the social housing system, the social security system. Like, if this is the thing about religious fundamentalism, right? Because you are a religious fundamentalist. Uh, you you ignore the evidence because it runs contrary to your fundamentalism, and that's just the hard truth. Like, you're exactly like a person who believes that Jesus Christ is coming back at any moment, and all the signs and all the evidence is right there. And I've got this book that tells you the truth about what's going on in the world, and everything's going to unfold, and God has all these decrees, and you just won't be convinced by evidence. That's all. John, good to see you. Yeah, content. Compare Chinese rail system to California rail. Just compare it. Yeah, holy God. Holy God, indeed. John says, checking in late, capitalist shackles loosen for a moment. I don't know. Today's conversation has been good, man. Like, it's been good. To me, the real benefit of what happened today has been to reveal like the inherent weakness of capitalism and the capitalist arguments, right? Like, this has basically just been like the propaganda points point by point, right? It's just literally like a CIA talking point bulletin board that I just went through. Boom, 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 boom. I might actually save this whole episode and like slice it up to just be like question, answer, question, answer, question, answer. Because this has just been like a rapid fire of just like the religious ideology, right? And I feel like I felt when I was debating like Christians and atheists when I was a fundamentalist Christian. And like that's why I'm so in tune with the religious ideology of it all, right? Because I used to be a religious ideologue, right? I used to be a fundamentalist Christian. And so I see it. I see it in these capitalists. Like, it's just religious fundamentalism. My Little Pony, just read some Lenin. Yeah, that's all. Mr. IMC, monarchy. I don't like it either, John. Yeah, I'm not a fan of monarchy. I don't know if I've ever seen you here before, Mr. IMC. Good to see you. Hope you're here to be beautiful. Why are the richest and most developed cities in China the one that adopted special economic zones while the others are worse off? Isn't this just neoliberalism? Yeah, once again, when communists succeed, it's neoliberalism. Like a planned economy overseen by communists using economic theory laid out by communists. No, it's not neoliberalism. Like, it's just getting a little bit embarrassing, my man. Like, please take a big, long, hard in your mirror, like a big look in your mirror, and finally just acknowledge that it's a religious ideology, what you're doing. It's no different than believing Jesus Christ is coming back. It's just a silly bitch religious ideology that was forced upon you. And that's the thing that I really want you to walk away with, right? Is that I'm deeply sympathetic to your plight. That you're clutching so hard onto the ideology that was foisted upon you by your family, by your school, by your education system. You're clutching onto it so hard because you just have to believe that it wasn't bullshit. You have to believe that they wouldn't have lied to you. Because if you believe that they lied to you, then how can you have any trust or any faith? Your family lied, or at least was clueless. Your school lied, or at least was clueless. And that you're clutching hold to this religious ideology because it's easier. And that's just the bottom line. It's just easier. It's easier to just believe that I'm just some kooky voice out in the middle of nowhere talking about all this craziness. You'll never believe it, guys. There's this crazy guy on the internet that believes all these crazy things. Well, time to send my 6-year-old into the coal mine. I love working for neoliberal capital. Like, it's just easier. Like, it means that you don't have to have arguments with your friends. It means that you don't need to have arguments with your family. It means that you don't need to question your upbringing or question what you were taught. It means that you can continue believing that you're on the side of good and that what you're doing is good and what you're doing is right. And it means that all you have to do is wake up, go to the job you hate to work for the people you've never met, go home and collect a check, and that's the totality of your life. And you don't need to pursue anything deeper. You don't need to pursue anything bigger. You don't need to pursue anything more important. But I'll tell you this, and I'll tell you this right now, my bud. I know that you want to. And how do I know that you want to? Because you came back. Because you intrinsically do know. You feel it inside of yourself. You feel deeply suspicious about what's going on around you. You feel deeply suspicious about what's happening in your society. You're feeling deeply suspicious about your government, about your church, about your school, about your friends, about your family. You're feeling deeply suspicious about all of that. And you're starting to come into the awareness that a system that wants to exploit you for profit is willing to lie to you. And you've just never met anybody who is willing to lay it out to you like this and tell it to you how it actually is. You're just cattle. You're no better than a cow. And if you want to live your life like a cow, then they'll happily let you live your life like a cow. Get up every single day, go do whatever dumb cow shit you're going to go do, eat your cud, drink your beer, play your video game, go to sleep, wake up, do it again. Moo. And if that's the life that's going to make you happy, they're more than happy to deliver it for you. But if you think there might be something deeper happening, if you think that this magical gift that you've been given called life should go further than simply being a piece of cattle for people you've never met and never will, then it's time to actually say, yeah, I bet the farmer lies to the cow about what happens in the slaughterhouse. Yeah, I bet they don't tell the other chickens what happened to the chicken that went away. I bet. So, red pill, blue pill. Take the one, you go back to being a cow. And I'm just a silly bitch. You'll never believe that crazy internet guy. Take the other pill, grow up a little bit. Start pursuing the mystery of your existence. Why are you here? What is life? What is the purpose of any of this? Do you genuinely believe that the purpose of your life is to wake up and go work a job you hate for people you've never met? Do you genuinely believe that that's the entire reason you exist? Is so that some capitalists can exploit you, and that the only way that you can get out of that is to exploit other people? Do you genuinely believe that that's the purpose of creation? That a billion-year path from the Big Bang to today was so that you could wake up and be a good little piece of cattle? Moo. 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 Go and die in the manner that best suits you. I thought that was pretty productive, honestly. I felt pretty good about that. Oh, Haltosis would like to put in a correction, and I accept this correction. Thank you, Haltosis. The Monroe Doctrine had nothing to do with the rebuilding of Korea. It was the U.S. Mutual Security Act, 1951, and a few others like the United States Operations Mission in Korea. Europe was rebuilt under the Marshall Plan. Sorry to nitpick. No, that's thank you. Thank you for your clarification. I actually really appreciate that, because that's the kind of thing I want to maintain consistency. I'm trying to educate at the same time as I'm trying to debate and negotiate. So that's good. Thank you. I appreciate that. In Nachu, first time chatter, all the decline is a mishmash of Soros and Barbara Lerner Spectre ideology. No Nazis in the chat, please. Just this fucking obvious Nazi dog whistling bullshit. No Nazis in the chat, okay? Thanks. Thanks for coming with your dumb Nazi ideology. It's George Soros. It doesn't matter that he's a Jew. But did you know that the Jews own Hollywood? John Hallenberg writes, fundamentally, I think capitalism works best as a distraction from addressing the most fundamental questions. Can you maybe clarify that a little bit, Bud? What do you mean by that? Cotton writes, also, he came back because he has a sense of fairness and his society bumps up against that and he feels the poke. Yeah. Well, if he feels the poke, he can get poked elsewhere. Nomen confusa. I call you Nom. First time chatter. Hey, question. How are the vibes politically in Canada? Can't imagine it's that far off from the US. It's terrifying over here. So it is better, and it's better for a lot of good reasons. Um, like, we actually have a justice system in Canada, and that helps a lot. Um, there is no justice system in America. America, what you're experiencing is a collapse. Like it, your politicians are all bribed. Everybody works on behalf of a small group of capitalists. Organizations like BlackRock and the Federal Reserve matter way more than anything else. Judges are bought and sold. Corruption is enshrined, right? Like straight up, like corruption is enshrined and is the law of the land insofar as your country has laws. Canada isn't like that. And so culturally, you get some of the same touchstones, but legislatively, there's been a lot of hamstringing. So I'll give you like real. Here's a great example of what I'm talking about now. So in America, if you want to be a judge, and I'm not talking like Supreme Court justice, I'm saying just a judge. If you want to be a judge, you win an election. So that means just some rich cocksucker who's like, I'd like to go be a judge in the county of Calabasas. I'm going to spend $450 million to get my name into the judge ring. I'll be the judge of the county of Calabasas. Hey, you go diggle. Right? So they just win. And now you have like a judge who's literally just like, well, that don't seem no right to me. Who like straight up, like their buddy Bill walks in and says, hey, Jeff, I need to secure a parcel of land, but there's a group of Indians who say that they got a treaty. Well, we'll take care of that, right, Bill? You're a good old boy. We'll take that. That's American legal. That's the American legal system, as far as I'm concerned. Right? And sure, you're going to find like a couple of people who are like, I am actually genuinely interested in justice. But the system is just a bunch of corruption. Just a bunch of rich cocksuckers basically being like, I'm a judge. So in Canada, to become a judge, right, the process is that you have to have been a lawyer in the Canadian system for 20 years. You have to go before a panel of judges and justify to these judges why you should be a judge. You have to write like a PhD thesis on Canadian law, essentially a critique of Canadian law and what you think could be improved in the Canadian legal system, that those judges have to read and go, yeah, this seems reasonable. And you also have to have taught law in a Canadian university. I forget the timeline on that. And if you succeed at all of that, so be a lawyer, teach law, write PhD thesis, then you can be a judge. It is a lifetime pursuit. It is something that people, I know people who have been walking down that path since they were children and are not close. That maybe they'll get there at some point. And so that system of law, that system of justice protects Canadian citizens in a way that the American system throws overboard from the outset. We do not elect judges. Short Defiance says, it's okay to say that you love being an American. I'm a Canadian. Why would I say that I love being an American? Because I'm proud to be home. I got to be careful with that. They'll give me a copyright strike. The problem is that I'm too good a singer. That happens all the time, by the way. You guys don't even know how often it happens. Where I'll just like break into a song and I'll sing like a couple of lines from the song and then I'll have a copyright strike. John Hallenberg writes, religion does that too, taking up the time to plead with non-existent gods rather than pursuing authentic plans of true happiness. Short Defiance says, I'm also American. Is it okay if I call you a compatriot? Yeah, we'll see about that. There's a lot of Nazis in America right now. There's a lot of like pro-Nazi shit happening in America right now. There's like that Fox News guy who you guys all saw this, right? I think it's in my Discord right now. I don't think I'll play the video, but this guy, yeah, this guy, straight up on Fox News, this hack, proud to be a Nazi. What's up, my Nazi? This what's his name? Gutenberg? Yeah, reclaim the word Nazi. This guy, what's this fucking idiot's name? Gutfeld. That's what it is. Gutfeld. Like, this guy should go to the Hague. Like, we should send this guy to the Hague. You should not be able to stand up in a civil society and say, we should normalize being a Nazi. Yeah, what's up, my Nazi? Like, literally comparing it to the N-word. Like, straight up. This is in your society. And it doesn't seem like anybody's doing anything about it. So, you'll forgive me if I don't take your desire to call me a compatriot, if I put a little grain of salt on that. And I say, yeah, we'll see about that, champ. We'll see about that. John writes, ICE was in my neighborhood the other day, rounding up nannies in a park. Are you? Whoa. What kills me, dude, is just how pointless it is. I just can't believe how pointless it is. Like, it's just so pointless. Like, why? What are you achieving? What are you getting out of that? Who are you helping? How does this help anybody? Like, it's just so weird and it's so gross. And it's just so strange. Like, how does this help anybody? Like, even if you remove the moral question, even if you say morally, like, even if you just say, okay, I don't care about the morals of it, forget it. We don't need to have an ethical conversation. Practically speaking, it's just a dumb fuck thing to do. It doesn't make any sense. Stone Ocean says, who cares who you're revolutionizing with as long as you're doing it right? I mean, I don't know how to respond to that comment. Because, like, if you're revolutionizing with Nazis, are you doing it right? But first time comment, as near as I can tell. Hope you're here to be beautiful. What we are experiencing is a crisis of spirit. And that is what it is. We are having a meaningful existential crisis, and we are having a meaningful collective conversation. A meaningful collective conversation about our priorities and what we care about. And if we don't, like, we're genuinely having a conversation about whether or not people should have access to food and shelter. To me, that's the core of the crisis. That's the core of the conversation. That the conversation is, should everyone have access to food and shelter, healthcare and education, or should a small group of people make another $1 billion? And that's actually the conversation that we're having. This is actually the conversation that we're actually all having. And what's startling, and what is, I don't think I'll ever get used to it, is that some people choose the money, not even for themselves, for the billionaires. It's startling. And that instead of actually seriously confronting the absurdity of this proposition, we're getting lost in this like religious fundamentalist worldview that says the money we made should matter more than your ability to eat. Like, where's our priorities? Why are we like this? Why are we abandoning ourselves? What are we gaining? And the hard reality is that we are no longer acting rationally. That we have been seized control of by our emotions. We have lost the ability, if we ever had it, to be rational. We are in a state of complete and total hysteria. And the people who are most caught up in the hysteria are the ones who believe that they're not. If you're genuinely justifying to yourself that anyone, anywhere, at any time should not have food and shelter, then you are in a hysteria. John writes, well, first of all, Isaac writes, have I seen all the rotten fruits left unpicked in the fields of California? Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be enough to create a famine, but it's definitely going to, like, there's a reason why the American economy is in this major downtick, right? Like, and there's also a phenomenon where, like, America will send up fruits here in Canada, and Canadians won't buy them. They'll just not buy them. You'll see like I've seen this, like you'll have like American produce beside Canadian produce, and the Canadian produce will be like well picked over and almost gone, and the American stuff is just sitting there, clearly not touched. Like it's really happening. Like people do not like the tourism industry in America is just suffering because travel is down as much as 70%. Like it's incredible. It's incredible to see what's happening. And it is going to get worse. And it's going to get worse because nobody is actually taking it seriously. Nobody's actually saying like, oh, this is actually like, we're here. Like we are on the precipice of Nazism. Like it is here. It is happening. And it's going to get just much, 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 much worse. And that the same idiots who voted for Trump will vote for like a genuine Nazi, like a real dyed in the wool, do the salute Nazi. John writes, if I went to downtown LA and pulled the homelessness population, a majority would choose capitalism over communism. Sad but true. Propaganda works, right? Like, we just had an entire episode talking to like a religious acolyte, uh, and like the major takeaway for me is that the effectiveness of capitalist propaganda is that the people who have been propagandized with this religious ideology don't believe they've been propagandized, and they don't think that what they think is a religious ideology. Like, at least Christians understand that it's a religious ideology. At least there is like a separation in the mind of a Christian between like the sciences and the religion of Christianity, and that there's a struggle there to reconcile the two, right? That's inherent and baked in. The capitalist religious acolyte, he thinks he's a scientist. He thinks that he's found the great science. Mark Jr. said, in Toronto, my cousin said they took out all the American beers at his local grocery stores. Yeah. Stone Ocean says, the contract between the bourgeois and the proletariat is nationalism. All right. Short defiance. Canada loves immigrants. We have a long history of allowing immigrants. It's a complex one, and we're having a real moment right now because there has been a dramatic increase of immigration, especially from India. Lots of Indian immigration. Isaac says, I went to Costco on Saturday. All the carts I saw mostly had Canadian products. Yeah, it's happening. Stone Ocean. Lenin was never anti-religious. Yeah, neither was Marx. It's sort of a misunderstanding that Marx was anti-religion, because that fairly famous quote, right, religion is the opiate of the masses, gets interpreted to mean that we need to get, and then there's the idea of communism, like communism is a post-religious world, but it's like, yeah, post, like, get rid of the Catholic Church, sure. Yeah, it's Western propaganda that makes Marx anti-religion. Yeah. No, from my perspective, like, I consider myself a theist, and I don't think I can get away from that. And it's something that I really like to talk about. And I take a day, usually it's Wednesday, of my life, and I really dedicate myself to focusing on that concept. The concept that we live in a living universe, and that the universe around us is alive, and that we're within a living entity. And that's always a very humbling experience. Sometimes it's hard and sometimes it's easy. And Marxism, all Marxism has ever done for me is reaffirm and help me understand more that the universe we live in is alive, and that this is a living entity, and that we are collective, that we are a single entity. Just in the way that you have red blood cells within your body, but those red blood cells are you, but they aren't you. That's how we exist within the universe. That we are like red blood cells. And just in exactly the same way that if you tried to explain to a red blood cell what a car payment was, it wouldn't have the foggiest of what you're talking about. That's how most of us exist within the universe we have. We're just kind of coping with it. And all Marxism has ever done is sort of deepen my understanding of the universe, because the full strength of Marxism is that it is acknowledging reality. It acknowledges the existence of reality as a principle and as a practice. And that's its true strength. That ultimately what Marxism pursues is the destruction of the fanciful version of religion, the narratives, the myths, while holding up what those myths are attempting to represent, and to bring into a more full awareness the nature of our reality and the nature of our place in it. Because when you sit and you contemplate, when I sit and when I contemplate on the nature of my existence, the nature of creation, it's quite spectacular. It's quite a thing. We exist. Here we are. And for whatever reason, for whatever purpose, somehow we've all found ourselves here, in this place, at this time, so that we can have a serious discussion about the experience that we're all collectively having. And I'm quite grateful that you're all here. I'm quite grateful that we're all experiencing this together. And my great hope, what I pray for, and what I work towards, my great hope is that one day humanity will understand that when you hurt another, you hurt yourself. And when you help another, you help yourself. That you are the you that is me. That I am the me that is you. And that you and I are one. And that one day, each and every person who has spawned into this reality will have an abundance of food, shelter, be able to go and receive an education, be able to receive health care. And the very concept of needing to earn it or pay for it will be so foreign that no one will even think to do it. That the process of providing it will be so entrenched in the ethos of our societies and our civilizations and our cultures that people will have forgotten how we built it. That the institutions will exist and no one will know where they came from. And if you told those people, hey, In the past, a person had to earn the food, that everyone would be bewildered, that everyone would be shocked. Why would you want to erect a toll booth to withhold food and shelter from anyone? They would ask. And I do believe, and I will always believe, even as the Nazis come to power, even as the famines sweep through, even as the empire collapses and the states begin to war, I will always believe that humanity will realize that we are one. I think that'll be the end of this one, guys. Always remember, each and every one of you is a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. These billionaires are doing everything they can to get you to not realize it. Rebel, revolt, repent. Good luck. We're going to need it.